It's time for our pre-show. It is our 220-1102 A plus study group, and I am about 10 minutes ahead. Why is it showing me something else on the YouTube side? I think it's caught up with itself now. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're doing, in our first hour, all A plus, really core 2 A plus, specifically 220-1102 A plus content. I'll be asking questions, and then the second hour, it's open chat. You can ask any question you would like. We'll go through that. Thank you, YouTube, for telling me information. Oh, we got so much going on right now. So much great A plus stuff happening right now. It's transition time. We're coming up on the end of the older series. All of the details in my practice exam books is now out. It's very exciting. I like it at this time. What's my opinion on cloud engineering? Heard it's like IT, but in the cloud. Well, it sounds like that's pretty much what it is. It's IT in the cloud. I mean, everything's in the cloud. To at this point, to specify the cloud as a different entity than what we're already running on our internal networks is a little short-sighted. But I can see the need for specifically calling out skills and people who are knowledgeable of the cloud. I think I've often said in these live streams, you better go get some cloud knowledge because that's what it's all about right now. We'll make all of this happen. Tyrant in the chat room taking core 2 in 2 hours. Well, we're going to see how well this first hour goes then. See how that works. Hello, UK. Is there a difference or are the differences, or it's vague when the question, though, is difference between 1101 and 1102. No, 1001 and 1101. There are differences. Yes, there's significant differences. So do not study from older materials. I'm having problems with my aux display and a bad connection. What should we study to become cloud engineers? You need to study operating systems. You need to understand networking, and then ultimately understand the cloud and how it layers on top of all of that. That's what you need to know, because there's a huge chunk of information you need on the operating system side, a huge chunk of information that you need on the networking side, and then another huge chunk of information you need in the cloud. So there's a lot happening there. Absolutely. Is the 1001 the older material? Not only is 1001 older, but the 1001 exams disappear completely forever on October the 20th. So as we sit here on October the 6th, that's coming up close. Now you can see I'm kind of trying to get a coax cable disconnected with the BNC connector on my aux connection, which is flashing on my screen. I'm going to have to stand up and do this. My apologies, since you were all behind me. Okay. There's the coax. I know it's kind of hard to see that where you are. This is the coax that's running my audio and video feeds. It's called SDI, Serial Data Interface, I think. And it's a standard for more high-end audio and video connections, because everything's just right there on a 4K, 8K connection. There we go. All right. I don't think that's going to help, but we're going to see what happens. That's why we start 10 minutes early, so I can see how things are looking, make some adjustments. We'll see how that goes. All right. We've got cameras all look good. Recordings are going. You can see my Cylons going right there. That aux connection that was flashing goes to one of those recordings. So it effectively renders the recording not good. However, I looked at a recording that I made on Tuesday and everything was fine, but it was flashing on my side. So this may just be the video coming to me that is a bad cable. So I need to get the cable replaced. There's a lot of cables. That's why I don't want to replace the cable. Like, oh, I got to replace the cable. There's so many cables I have to sift through. I've got to redesign this studio so that everything is so much easier to get to. So whenever I have to make a cable change or something, it can be done very quickly. Black Raven said, I've been watching your Network Plus 008 videos, which have been helpful. I'm still having a really hard time grasping everything. Doing poorly on a practice test. Any advice? Yes, you've pretty much described Network Plus. That's how Network Plus works. It gives people a really hard time and makes them grasp everything poorly. That's just normal. So if anything, you should feel pretty good about that. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. The things that I can really recommend doing is just taking the exam objectives and taking a chunk of information in the exam objectives, and you can decide how much you want to take at a time and just learn those things. And that's it. Don't go beyond that. Don't read more in the book. Don't try to do a whole chapter. Just do that tiny little piece. Even if it's take a section, take a handful, take 5 topics, take 3 topics, take it a topic at a time if you would like. Do whatever makes sense for you and go one bullet at a time through everything associated with those exam objectives. That's my recommendation. And I think that's a pretty good recommendation for anybody who's working through those. Ottawa, Canada is here. I will let Mrs. Professor Messer know. We got kinfolk in Canada, so we're often aware of the things in Canada. We know about Thanksgiving coming up. We know about all the holidays when they hit. We have to keep track of both countries. How they work. Johnny in the chat room with the super chat. Johnny says, I passed my 1101 yesterday. Thank you, Professor. Congratulations on your 1101. Now it's redirection over to the 1102. This should be pretty good. And that'll be a fun one to do as well. I think there's plenty to go through with that one. And thank you so much for the super chat as well. Anytime people want to support what we do here, I am all about it. So thank you so much for that. And best of luck with your 1102. That'll be good. Let's see what else we got here. You can become a software engineer with IT certification. You can, but why would you? If you're going to be a software engineer, go be a software engineer. IT is not your thing. IT is a completely different animal. So either develop applications or do IT stuff. Ne'er the twain shall really meet. There's very little in there. What's the latest exam codes for the Core 1 and Core 2? We'll talk about that in the first 5 minutes of the live stream, so you're in the perfect place. We'll go through the details. The latest are actually 2 different sets of exams. This is the challenge. I'll talk all about that. There's actually 4 current exams for the A+ certification. What? 4 of them? Yeah, I'll talk about that as we get started here too. You only have to pass 2. Everybody take a breath. Let the blood pressure come down. You only have to pass 2 of those to make that happen. Calgary is here. Hello, Calgary. Thank you for being here. New Philly, Ohio is here. Thanks for checking in. Is the volume a little low? Let me see. Test. It's exactly where it normally is. I can see my time up here. I want to be in the yellow. I don't want to be in the red. So if I'm talking and it's not in the red, I'm in good shape. So no, the volume's not a little low. It's exactly where it normally is on the YouTube. Also, the exam codes for Security Plus. What about the exam codes for Security Plus? I don't know. Ask a question about them. I'll answer it. And if we don't have it answered in the next 2 minutes, you can ask it in the second hour, where you can ask whatever you would like. Do we need to know how to configure IP addresses and subnet masks on either the 1102 or 1002? Well, I mean, you need to know where you need to go in the operating system to configure those, certainly. You should have learned how to configure an IP address and subnet mask in the 1101 or the 1001. So by the time you get the 1102 or 1002, you already know it, but you need to know where to go in the operating system. This is my where to go hand gesture. That will tell you, okay, I need to go to this place in the operating system to configure that for Windows, for Linux, and for Mac OS. There you go. The only thing that you need to worry about from an IP address perspective is what they are. At this point, you're not doing subnetting. This is a certification to see how well you can configure the workstation. So normally you would be given an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway, a DNS setting, or anything else you would know. How do you configure those? I heard that this is happening. Well, you probably heard correct. We'll talk more about that as we get started. We got 30 seconds to go. Let me see if I can get my keynote running. Keynote, play. There it goes. So far, so good. I think that's a good sign. Does that mean that something is going to happen? Is that really a Mega Sea Monkey in the chat room with a $5 super chat who says, hey, Professor, I am new here and I am loving your vids. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you for checking out the channel, checking out our videos, and hopefully getting some good IT training in your pocket. And thank you for the $5 super chat as well. We sure appreciate that. We're going to get started here right now. It's top of the hour. Look at that. It all dinged. It said hello. We're going to talk about what you need to pass this A+ right now in the live stream. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2022 Professor Messer 220 1102 A+ study group. I had to think for a moment. What study group are we doing? We're doing an A+ study group to see how well you know all of the topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Those will be the 220 1102 exam objectives. And in this first hour, I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So stick around for that. In the second hour, I open up the chat room. We'll just take questions from the chat room. So whatever questions you might have about IT, about technology, or about, I don't know, the world in general, you're welcome to ask whatever you'd like. I'll be glad to answer those in the second hour. If you are here, though, in the first hour, you can, and you're here live, this is not the replay, you can participate interactively and live by opening up a new browser window and browsing over to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you want to go, is professormesser.com/QA. There's a question waiting for you right there. It's a question from last month. We'll talk about that in a moment. If you would like to use an app instead, some of you would, there is an app called the Socrative Student app. Socrative is the name of the service we use for the Q&A. You can go to that Socrative Student app, and it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right so that you'll be able to answer and see any of the questions that are there. Now, if you do all of that, there'll be a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question because it is a question that came from the previous month's study group. And usually I try to find one that we didn't do too well on to see if maybe we improved a month later. This question that you should have found on your screen asks, which of the following is the most common method of storing passwords? Is it EFS, hash, WPA3, digital signature, or asymmetric encryption? Now, if you know the answer, go to this link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put answers in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. That's our standing rule. But you can absolutely put information into professormesser.com/QA and get that question answered. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. Instead, we're going to keep moving. I would like to thank everyone who is here and live, and I would also like to thank everyone watching the replay. Many more people watch the replay than the live stream because it's just so easy to do the on-demand stuff. So that's one of the advantages that you have by being here live, is that you can plug in your answer, but you can still follow along if you're watching on the replay. When we're not here doing a live stream, all of our training videos are available on YouTube. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube. You can also see our daily A+ pop quiz question by going to professormesser.com/Twitter, or probably a prettier picture with it, professormesser.com/Instagram. That's where you need to go. And you can follow us and see what's going on in our crazy world. Before we get into the details of this exam, I want to thank Justin in the chat room with the $19.99 super chat. Justin says, passed the 1101 in 2 weeks of study with no IT experience, only your free materials. And I'm sure this also included a lot of caffeine and sleepless nights. The resources you provide are amazing. On to 1102, then home labs to get practical experience. Thank you. You've got exactly the right strategy. Follow the content, follow the objectives, get as much hands-on as possible, do plenty of practice questions, and you'll have success. So thank you, Justin. We sure appreciate your super chat as well. Every bit of support to the site goes directly to keeping this crazy experiment going. So thanks so much for that, and congratulations on your 1101. Best of luck with your 1102. So those of you that maybe are just starting with your A+ studies, you're hearing these strange numbers, the 1101, the 1001, the 1102. Let's break down what all of this happens to be. We can start with two of the exams for A+ are called the 220 1001 and the 220 1002. 220 1001, 220 1002. These are two exams that were released on January the 15th of 2019. You may be thinking to yourself, 2019, there's a lot that's happened in the world since 2019. That seems like a long time ago, and you would be correct. Thankfully, CompTIA retires these exams about every 3.5 years, and that means that the exam retirement for the 1001 and 1002 will be October the 20th. That's right. This will be the last live stream where we ever mention, well, maybe not ever, but last time we ever talk about the 1001 and 1002, because the next live stream, it will no longer be available. If you are working on earning your A+ and you are studying the 1001 and or the 1002, make sure you finish your studies by October the 20th, because those exams go away. And if you've passed one and you haven't passed the other one yet, you'll have to restart the whole thing after October the 20th. That would be a little crazy. On both of these exams, you have 90 minutes. On the 1001, you need to score 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And on the 1002, you need to score a 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. Even if you pass these exams on October the 19th or the 20th or whatever day they actually disappear, you're able to pass both of those exams. Your certification is good for 3 years. So it doesn't matter what they do to the questions, to the tests. Once you get certified, you're certified for 3 years. Now, of course, there's a new set of exams that you could take. Those new sets have a different set of numbers, the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Those exams were released on April the 20th of this year, so they've already been out about 6 months, and we expect that those will retire somewhere around November of 2025. That means that if you are currently starting your studies, you're sort of getting into the process right now, you'll probably want to start with the 1101 and 1102 because there's just not enough time to use the older versions of these exams and pass both of them by the 20th of October. Today is the 6th of October. That doesn't give you a lot of time. You got 2 weeks. That's about it. And then it goes away completely. The exam requirements are identical to the previous version. You need to make a 675 and a 700 on both of those. And if you are starting your studies right now, you'll find that everything that's in the 1101 and 1102 exams is structured very similar to the older 1001 and 1002 exams. So if you are transitioning from the older exams and you've decided, I'm going to run out of time, I just don't have enough time, I'm going to start studying the newer versions of these exams, it will be a very easy process for you. It'll be almost the identical process to be able to do that. Now, fortunately, all of these study materials are available for you at the Professor Messer website. I have 1001 and 1002 video course. I have course notes and practice exams and success bundles for those. I also have 220, 1101, and 1102 courses for those of you studying that pair, also with course notes, practice exams, and success bundles. So plenty that you can find at the Professor Messer website to help you with your studies. Of course, I do have an audio replay of this available afterwards. It is published in podcast form, and if you have a podcast listening program or you simply like to listen on podcasts on a third-party service like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, they're all there. You'll find it at professormesser.com/podcast, or just visit your favorite streaming provider and you'll find my podcasts are there as well. If it's not on your favorite streaming provider, let me know and I'll add it. How hard is that? We'll make it happen. There's also a video replay available of this live stream immediately afterwards. You can find it on YouTube. And if you wait about a day, you'll notice that magically, somehow, that you will see timestamps that have been added to the YouTube video description so you can find exactly what you're looking for. You can click on it and go directly to that timestamp. We're able to get those thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this and having to listen to it all at 2x speed. She's also watching the live replay go by with the chat room. So if you're someone who likes these timestamps, feel free to put a mention into the chat room. Lori likes to read through those as well. It's kind of nice to know that some of you are able to take advantage of those. When we're not doing a live stream, we've got a chat that's available on our Discord. Simply visit professormesser.com/Discord. That is your invitation link. That will take you to Discord, and you can absolutely join us there. There's plenty of people in there studying their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. And I like to hang out in there as well. It's a great place to ask questions. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you're going to need to take your exam, and the vouchers are available on the CompTIA and Pearson VUE website, but they're available at full cost. There's no discounts available on their sites. So if you are someone who would like to take these exams but not pay full price, you can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers, where the vouchers are already discounted. They are so discounted that someone on YouTube even said, "Hey, have you updated the pricing on these? Because these are much less expensive than what I find over on the CompTIA side." And I go, yes, they are absolutely the latest vouchers. They work for all of your CompTIA exams. And if you'd like, I can raise the price. I didn't know how to respond to that. But the prices are nice and low. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need a plug-in in your browser. They're just low prices that are there. Not only do you get the voucher at a discounted rate, you also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a set of tips and tricks that I wrote that can help you with your studies, that can help you during your exam get a few extra points. So if you want to see my compilation of what I think is important during your study and exam process, you'll find that in my Exam Hacks ebook. You can't buy the Exam Hacks ebook. It's only available if you get a voucher or you get a success bundle. So this is something that you can only find as part of these bundles that are available on the Professor Messer website. So by the way, all of you who go there and purchase your voucher, thank you so much. It does help to support what we do here. We are a platinum partner for CompTIA. That's what allows us to sell these vouchers. They are absolutely okay with that. They like it, so they've given their okay for me to be able to do that. This is not something weird or under the table. This is absolutely legitimate, so I wouldn't do it any other way. Let's talk about that question I talked about earlier. Which of the following is the most common method of storing passwords? Is it EFS, hash, WPA3, digital signature, or asymmetric encryption? And we've got all of these options. Let's see what you chose. We show the results. 68% say it is a hash. In the chat room, folks aren't completely wrong. Plain text might have been an answer. Some websites like to do that. Not many these days, thankfully. But that's a pretty strong number, 68%. 10% of you, no, 18% of you said asymmetric encryption. We'll talk about in a moment why that would not be why you would like to store a password. Wait, I thought asymmetric encryption was very secure. We'll talk about how it is not secure when it comes to passwords. WPA3 is an encryption method used on wireless networks, so that wouldn't be it. EFS is encryption on a single file or set of folders that's in your operating system. And finally, digital signature. Only 1% of you chose digital signature. You're absolutely correct. What we were looking for is a hash. One of the things that is unique to a hashing function is it takes a bit of input. This input could be a password or it could be a novel. And it will take that input and output a series of information, a fingerprint. It is what we call it as a shortcut. It is a hash. And that hash is the same size regardless of what input you put into it. The other interesting part about this is a hash being a fingerprint. Just as we can't look at your fingerprint and know what you look like, we can't look at a hash and know what the original thing was that created the hash. It's a one-way trip. So even though you have a password hash, you have no way to know what the original password was, and there's no way to undo the process to be able to determine what the password was. And in my mind, that's exactly what you should have on it, hashing that password. This is an important part of this. So as you go through the process of understanding what the differences are in these storage processes, hashing becomes pretty important. We have salted hashes. As you get into the security side, there's many different ways to manage this hashing process. But on this list, hash is indeed what we were looking for. The reason it would not be asymmetric encryption, 17% of you chose that one, is if you encrypt something, then naturally you can decrypt something, which means that if there was some way that the attacker was able to gain access to the key or the passphrase associated with that asymmetric encryption, they would be able to decrypt all of your passwords, which obviously is not what you want to have happen. You don't want there to be any way that anyone would ever be able to see a password ever. And that's why you often know people, or when you call into your help desk or you work with people to reset a password, they say, go to this page, you can create a new password. And you say, well, can't you just log in with my password? I can't see your password. There's no way to know what your password is. It's hashed and it's stored in our database, and I don't know what your password is. And now that you don't know what your password is, nobody knows what your password is. So we have to start the whole process over with our passwords. Hashing is what we were looking for. If you answered B, 71% of you got that one absolutely correct. Now, as many of you know, there are mostly multiple choice questions on your exam. The last question we did, this is an example of multiple choice where you have a question and there are multiple choices to choose from, A through E. You could have just taken a guess and you still had a 20% chance of getting that right. Well, CompTIA knows that to really determine if you know what you're talking about, we're going to need to ask you maybe different kinds of questions. Maybe a fill-in-the-blank question, maybe a matching question or a drag-and-drop question. Perhaps it's one where you're put in a Windows or a Linux prompt and you have to complete a particular process. So what I create for you every month is a brand new performance-based question. And so I have one for you today that is a matching question. This question asks, match the Linux commands to the descriptions. Some descriptions will not be used. We have 4 different descriptions. We have sudo, cat, top, and df. Those are the 4 Linux commands: sudo, cat, top, and df. And for those of you listening on the podcast side, let's step through all 6 of those different descriptions. You'll notice we have 4 commands and 6 descriptions. That means we'll have 2 left over at the end. So for extra credit, what are the 2 left over? What commands can you associate with the 2 descriptions that were left over? We'll go through that too. So the 6 descriptions are: list all files in a directory, combine multiple files into a single file, view documentation for utility, list volumes and available storage space, view the performance of running programs, and lastly, run a program with elevated permissions. Which one of those are associated with sudo, which is associated with cat, what is associated with top, what is associated with df? If you think you know the answer, use the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. A few things kind of slid by as we were going back and forth. Timothy in the chat room with the $25 super chat. Timothy off the top rope. And Timothy says, I passed my 1002 and finally got certified after a year of A+ study. Timothy studies like I do. It takes a very long time to study this content, which I think makes it all the sweeter when you finally pass that exam and you pass the 1002 just before it was retired. Well done. I have to thank you with your materials and study groups. Thanks, Timothy. You're absolutely welcome, and congratulations on that 1002. The 1001 and 1002, I get taking a year to get through a certification because that's the way I study. I like to really know the content. I don't have a lot of time during the day to study, so it takes longer for me to do that. Really becomes a challenge. But if you can spend the time and go through the content, you'll earn your A+ as well. Congratulations on that. Let's talk about this performance-based question. I'm waiting for a number of you to lock in your answers. Not a lot of people are doing it yet. But if you want to put them in, you can simply put the number in the letter. If you think 1A, 2B, 3C, and 4D are the matching, then that's what you'll need to know. So absolutely. Yes, there's plenty of Linux on the exam. Linux commands are big. You have to know Mac OS. Although a number of these Linux commands are also commands that you can run in Mac OS. And of course, you need to know Windows, distributions of Windows. So that's useful as well. Let's go through each one of these and see if you happen to know what we were doing with those. So if we look at the very first one, sudo is what we were looking at. Sudoku. No, what is that? Sudo. Sudo is a pretty good one. If you are someone who is an administrator and you need to run an application and you want it to run as, well, in Windows, we run as administrator. In Linux, we run as the super user, the SU. And if you wanted to do something as the super user, you would sudo. That's where that comes from. So you can run a single command with elevated permissions. It runs that command, but it still leaves you at a normal prompt without those elevated permissions once you're done. That's a good best practice. You never want to run normally with elevated permissions. You only want to use those elevated permissions when they are required on your system, very similar to the way that you would do in a Windows environment where you would run as administrator. Same thing. It's and there are other people will pronounce it differently. Sudo, some people will say, but you're not doing something, you're doing something. So I say sudo. Same reason in Linux, you'll hear people say, I was restarting the daemon. Some people, but it's daemon spelled D-A-E-M-O-N. So some people will say daemon. Both are correct. The same thing as sudo is correct. There is no wrong way to say these. And if you ever find one of these ridiculous Linux people that like to police the how people say words, they're probably in the wrong business. There's an English job somewhere in a classroom waiting for them. You can let them know. Next on our list is cat, pronounced cat, just like a cat would be, like a kitty cat. Cat, pronounced cat, stands for concatenation. It's an abbreviation for concatenation, and it allows you to combine multiple files together into a single file. That's one of the easiest ways to describe how cat can work. Cat can do a number of different things, but that is the common use of the concatenation command, is to combine those. I know there's GNU and there's GNU. There's GNOME and GNOME. We could go on forever with the way we pronounce and mispronounce different words in Linux, or allegedly mispronounced different words in Linux. So that's cat is combining multiple files into a single file. Top, pronounced top, it shows you the top of something. In this case, it shows you the top applications in use. Top applications by CPU utilization. Top applications by memory usage. Top applications by a number of different criteria. If you've ever watched your event viewer in Windows and you've watched all the applications that are running, and you can see how much storage input output is going by, how much memory is in use, how much CPU, the Linux version of this, especially at the command line, is top. You would top it. And be able to see what the top things are. Like all of these, by the way, in my video in section 1.11 on the 220.11.02, the video is called Linux Commands. I demonstrate every single one of these. So you'll see in real time what this looks like when you're running the top command. Useful tool, by the way. It's one that most Linux administrators and myself run all the time. I'll get on to, if you're on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you're on a Linux machine, occasionally I'll be interested in knowing how much utilization, what's the load on the system, how much memory is being used by a particular daemon. And if I want to see that, I can check the daemons, I can check the applications and the processes they're currently running, and I can see all of that available with the top command. Very, very useful. And the last one, DF. DF. That means disk free. That's what that stands for. I want to know how much storage space is available on my storage drives, and you can list the volumes and available storage space using the df command. If you're a human, you'll probably want to use df-h if it's not already set that way as an alias for you in Linux, so that you can see it not as a number of blocks, but you can see it as a number of bytes, megabytes, and gigabytes, which really help. The df command, that's another one I use all the time. So there were two we did not use. Those of you in the chat room, we have list all files in a directory and view documentation for a utility. So there's got to be two Linux commands that you would associate with this. To list all files in a directory, you literally use the ls command, the list command. That's what we would use. ls is the perfect example to list. There's many ways to list files in a directory, just as there is many ways to list a lot of other things that are in Linux. But in our case, ls is what we were looking for here. I'll take whatever other options you might want to put there. And lastly, viewing the documentation for a utility. You will use this quite a bit in Linux, especially at the very confusing command line. You will use man command. Man, that's what you'll use, man, is the man command. The man command stands for manual, which is referring to documentation. A manual is a written form of documentation that tells you how an application is supposed to work. That is what those are. And the different pages that you will look through are the manual pages. And the way you view those is with the man command. So if you wanted to get a view of what the top command did, you would type in man top, and it will tell you all the documentation for the top command. To exit out of there, you can Control-C or hit the Q button, and you're back to the command prompt. Man is an incredibly useful utility. To search through man, this one will help you. This will save you a lot of time. Use the / option. The / option is the search option that will search through man and a lot of other editors as well. So if you're grepping, I guess if you're topping or you're lessing or you're mooring, not top so much, but if you're lessing or if you are mooring, I bet the / works in top too. It just works in so many places. We just sort of use / as the search function. So those are the answers. Sudo will run a program with elevated permissions. Cat will combine multiple files into a single file. You've got the top command that views the performance of running programs. The df or disk-free command will list volumes and available storage space. The ls command will list all files in a directory. And the man command, man, will show documentation for utility, dude. Those are the 6 different Linux commands, and there are many, many, many more in your exam objectives. Make sure you check out those objectives so you know exactly what Linux commands might be shown to you in the middle of an exam. That would be good. This is really useful to be able to work through those. So hopefully this will give you an idea. There are a number of different ways. I think tree is another good way to show different files in a directory, although the tree command is not part of the A+ exam objectives. As I mentioned, there's probably 100 different ways to show files in a directory and many different utilities that you could use for that. So that is our performance-based question of the month. That's what we were shooting for, is the answer to one of those. In the chat room, I want to thank Defense 2100 for the $4.99 super chat. Defense, or defense, I guess it depends on if you're playing football or not. Hey, Professor, I passed my A+ a few weeks ago. I wanted to say your videos and books were extremely helpful. Thank you for what you do. You're absolutely welcome. Congratulations on your A+. I do like to say that I'm not the one that took the exam. I didn't do very much towards that end. You're the one that had to do all of the study. You're the one that had to do all the hard work. You went in and passed that exam. Congratulations on all of that. That's fantastic. Congratulations. Great news. Thank you for sharing that news with me, by the way. I love to hear your success stories. Please, if you want to hit the top button on my website to contact us, those come directly to me. And I love to read through your success stories. Thank you so much for putting that in there. And thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Let's do some more questions. I've got another one. Then we'll go back to some of the other comments that folks are putting in. This next question asks, which of the following would be the best choice for automating a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel? Would it be Python, batch file, JavaScript, shell script, VB script? Which of the following would be the best choice for automating a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel? Would it be Python, batch file, JavaScript, shell script, VB script? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That's what you would use. By the way, those options that are there are all from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't recognize any of them, make sure you make a note so that you can go back and have a look at all of those different scripting commands that are available that you need to know about. Very good. One of the things that I always focus on, and we'll talk more about this as we go through it, is really trying to be able to fit the right answer into what's being asked. And this is a very good example of where I could probably do this with 2 or even maybe 3 of the available answers given a different scenario. So you may find that there are technically correct answers that you could apply to this particular problem, and that would certainly be 3 that you could choose from. However, the question didn't ask for what could you use to do this. It says which of the following would be the best choice, and that also limits you to what is on the screen. In fact, you might say, oh, I could do this, but I would use a completely different utility for this. Well, that's great, but that wasn't the question. The question said, of the following. Of these things, you've been given a box. The box has 5 things in it. Pick one. That's what you got. Yeah, but I want to use something. You don't have it. It's what's in the box. There's 5 things in the box. But I would rather use, you can't use the other thing. You have to use what's in the box. And it can be a source of frustration when people are taking the exam because they believe the answer is something different than what's on the screen. But that wasn't the question. Although they're perfectly correct, you probably could use that other thing to make that happen. You probably could use that other utility. And in fact, the other utility might be very popular and very common to use, but CompTIA intentionally did not give you the easy answer. They intentionally gave you answers where you would have to think about every single one of them and figure out which one would be the best. So make sure you think about those as you go through this. Before we look at the answer, I want to thank Jonathan in the chat room, the $5 super chat. Jonathan says, I passed my 1101 on Monday. It was tricky. Thank you so much for the videos. Appreciate you. Congratulations, Jonathan, on your 1101. Now you get to work on the 1102, and you're not limited by the October 20th deadline, more importantly. So very useful to do that. Let's see how you do with the rest of these. This question asked, which of the following would be the best choice for automating a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel? Is it Python, batch file, JavaScript, shell script, or VB script? Let's show the results. We did not get a majority on this one. In fact, everything is double-digit answers. VB script with 44% of this. The shell script with 20% of this. 14% on Python. Batch file was 12%, and JavaScript was 10%. So almost a 3-way tie for third to be able to do this. But the 44% of you, if we had to go with the plurality of you answering, we would go with E, VB script, as what we would choose for automating spreadsheets in Microsoft Excel. I've done lots of automation in Microsoft Excel, lots of scripting, and I used Microsoft Visual Basic Scripting to do it. VB script. It was a type of scripting language that was introduced, how long ago was it now? I want to say 25 years. It's been around for a very long time. It is probably not the most secure form of scripting. You would only run a VB script in Excel if you trusted that script. In fact, when you start running a script in Excel, it says, whoa, I haven't run this one before. Do you trust this script? Is this okay to run? Because this could cause significant security concerns if you have not. So VB scripting is what we were looking for here. This is the scripting used in Windows. You can use it in a Windows application that supports it. And there are some functions inside the Windows desktop that will support VB script as well. So if you are automating a spreadsheet and you're in Microsoft Excel, VB script is the way to do it. Now, some of these other scripting languages are still pretty good. For example, shell script. There may be a way to use a shell script in Linux to communicate across the network using an API that somehow was automating a spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel. I could see how that could be a thing. Now, it took me a lot of steps in multiple operating systems to make that happen, but there is a way to do that. That's an example of how shell script could possibly be an answer under the right circumstance, but it's not the best choice, and that's what we were looking for. So shell script being the scripting that we would do very commonly at a shell or shell prompt in Linux is not what we wanted. 13% of you said Python. Python, another good example. With Python, we don't have to run it in another operating system. We can run it right there in Windows, but Python does not have direct hooks into Microsoft Excel. We would have to use some type of API or some type of third-party integration that allowed us access to Excel if we were using Python. And so it would probably not be the best choice. We have 11% of you that said a batch file. Again, a batch file is in Windows. It's at the command prompt. And with the right tweaks and APIs, you might be able to manipulate Excel. But in this case, it's not the best choice. Only 11% of you chose that one. And lastly, JavaScript. We just talked about a little bit of JavaScript. JavaScript used in a browser to be able to change what you see on your browser screen. And it's very good in your browser, but not really good in Microsoft Excel. So not what we would use. The best answer here indeed is VB script. 46% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another multiple choice question. This question since we're talking about operating systems, asks, a Mac OS user has saved an 8 gigabyte graphics file onto a USB flash drive to transfer between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which file system is most likely in use? Is it ext4, FAT32, APFS, NTFS, or exFAT? A Mac OS user has saved an 8 gigabyte graphics file into a USB flash drive to transfer between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which file system is most likely in use? Is it ext4, FAT32, APFS, NTFS, or exFAT? It's got to be one of those, right? All of those are real. I didn't make up those letters and numbers. Those are actual things directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. See which one you think it is by locking in your answer at professormesser.com/QA, the link that's on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Work through all of these. This is going to be one you should really think about. What is it going to be? What option should we use? And we'll break through all of these and figure out the details of it as we go through all of this. professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. And for those of you that are watching on the replay, probably get a few in here as well. I think a number of you are choosing some interesting choices. We'll see what those are. I don't like to look at what you're putting in until I click the button. We all see it at one time. So I'm sort of making a guess based on the way this particular question is asked, and I'm looking at the number of answers that are coming in. Stop Googling. The question's not in Google because I just wrote it this weekend. So you're not going to find the question anywhere. It's a question no one's seen before. So really the question is, do you know all of your file systems? That's a tough question, isn't it? Not only that, do you know all of the file systems that are listed in the 220-1102 exam, which is different than the ones that are listed in the 1002 exam? So that's how the differences are in what we think about. Let's see how we did with this one. The question asked, a Mac OS user has saved an 8 gigabyte graphics file onto a USB flash drive to transfer between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Which file system is most likely in use? Is it ext4, FAT32, APFS, NTFS, or exFAT? Let's see how you answered. The results show us, again, not quite sure. It's almost a three-way tie for first place. 31% of you say FAT32. 28% of you say exFAT. I guess that's kind of a two-way tie for first. 23% of you say NTFS. 11% said APFS. And then 7% of you said ext4. So single digits for the poor little ext4 out here. So we have a certain scenario here. First, we have a big file. We have an 8 gigabyte file. That's an important data point. The other is that we're a Mac OS user and we're sharing this between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So there are 3 different operating systems here. So we need to find a file system that supports connecting to and reading and writing from Windows, Linux, and Mac OS from 3 different operating systems. And it needs to be able to support a file that is at least 8 gigabytes in size. So what type of file system would we use? Would we use the old FAT to be able to do that? Would that be the one that we would take advantage of, the file allocation table? Well, nothing really runs the old style FAT anymore. You would have to run DOS to be able to pull that one up. But you certainly have challenges. If you're looking at something like the current version of Windows, you could save a file system on a flash drive to FAT32. In fact, most people use FAT32 and can put information on a machine using FAT32 because Mac OS understands FAT32, Linux understands FAT32, Windows certainly understands FAT32, but the answer is not FAT32 because that particular file system can only support a maximum file size of 4 gigabytes, and we have an 8 gigabyte file. So there's our challenge, is how do we do this then? How do you, these flash drives are huge these days. How would you put a file on a flash drive that's more than 4 gigabytes in size? Well, you would use a file system that was designed for flash drives and storing large files, and that file system is exFAT. It stands for Extended File Allocation Table. It sounds like it's the FAT we no longer talk to any longer. and we have to send money every month. That's not the case. exFAT is better than FAT. It's the extended file allocation table. Microsoft created this system, and it's one that is available in most operating systems. Linux will read and write exFAT. Mac OS will read and write exFAT. And of course, Windows will read and write exFAT. So if you have a big file and you want to share it on a flash drive, that's exactly what you should format that flash drive as. You should format it with the exFAT file system. That's what we were looking for. exFAT is what we wanted. And in fact, 29% of you did choose E, exFAT, not the thin fat, not the xthin or the now fat. It's the exFAT. This is complicated enough. I probably shouldn't do that. 31% of you said FAT32, and now you understand that 8 gigabyte file is not going to save into a FAT32 file system. That's not going to work for you. 22% of you said NTFS, the NT, New Technology File System from Microsoft. The New Technology File System, great for Windows, but because it's a Microsoft file system, it has limited support in Linux and Mac OS. Some versions of Linux and Mac OS can read and write in a limited way using NTFS, but not completely compatible with NTFS. So in this case, the one that is most likely in use is probably not one that has limited support in those operating systems. APFS, 11% of you chose that one. That's the Apple file system. Again, it's for Apple. It's not available on any other operating system, so we certainly wouldn't use that. And ext4 is almost exclusive to Linux and Android. It's not one that you would find support for in Windows, and that doesn't help us if we need to share files between Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. The option here, the one that is the right answer, the one that is the one most likely in use, is answer E, exFAT. 29% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. There is so much content in these A+ exams. As you start your studies, you're thinking, we just need to know Windows, right? I know Windows. I use Windows every day. How hard can it be? And then you get into the details where you have to know hardware, networking, and security, and operating systems, and troubleshooting, and all of the other things that are listed on the exam objectives. And so one of the things that I highly recommend you do as you watch these videos is you take notes. The problem, of course, is that there are 137 videos, 19 hours of content. I was just putting down all of my transcripts into a single 8.5 by 11 single-spaced 12-point document yesterday, and it was over 100 pages. There is a lot of content in these exams. So instead of you having to do so much work with your writing down every little thing that's on these slides as they go by, I've already done it for you. This is my 220-1102 course notes. This is the PDF version that I have in front of me, and you can see everything from my videos is in here. All the important graphics, all the important text, all the important charts, they are in here. And you can go video by video. This video is the 1.9 installing operating systems, followed by 1.9 upgrading Windows, followed by 1.10, the Mac OS overview, and et cetera, and et cetera. So all of this is available on my website. You can purchase these either by themselves. You can combine them as a combo with course notes and practice exams. It's all out there. We'll talk more about practice exams as we get down to the end of this. But yes, I do have 1102 practice exams available as well. If you'd like to learn more about this, though, they are available not only in a digital form, but also a physical form. There's the book and everything that comes with those course notes. It's all there. It's exactly the same content, just in a format that we made from dead trees. That's what that is. Don't worry, we planted more trees. That's the beauty of a tree. You'll be okay. We got plenty to go through with trees. It is hard these days to get paper, though. So we appreciate your patience. For those of you that are ordering these, we get them out to you. We print them on demand and we ship them directly to you. And I get them into all of that. The prices vary depending on if you buy them and bundle them with other products. It's a different price. If you bundle things together, you get a bit of a discount. So that's one of the things available. You'll find all the pricing and all the combinations that are on my site available at professormesser.com/1102notes. And this is a great way to support the site as well. We thank everyone who has purchased the course notes, that uses these course notes. We hope it's helped you with your studies. Let's do another question. Next one on my list right here is this question that asks, a company would like to make a web server available for anyone on the internet to access. Which of the following would be the best location for this service? Would it be VPN, cold site, screen subnet, VLAN, or internal network? A company would like to make a web server available for anyone on the internet to access. Which of the following would be the best location for this service? Would it be VPN, cold site, screened subnet, VLAN, internal network? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen to lock in your answer. It's plenty to go through. Some of you have some questions regarding some of those. If I watch past 1,000, 1,002 videos, or even the 1101 and 1102 videos from live study groups, can you request proof of participation for CEUs? You can, absolutely. So whether you're watching it live or on a replay, you can send me a request for continuing education unit credits. We'll talk more as we get later on in this study group as to what those are, and I'll tell you how to do it for this video in just a few minutes. Stick around for that. I think they are renaming some of these terms. They are not. Those are the terms that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Those are real terms that you could expect to see on an exam. I wouldn't give you outdated terms. You're not at some other site on the internet studying. You're on professormesser.com. We don't deal with outdated content. These are the most accurate videos, course notes, and practice exams to the exam objectives that you will find on the internet. That is a guarantee. I've gone through every single bit of information in every single one of these videos, in every single one of my course notes, and in all of my practice exams to make sure there's nothing in there that is outdated. That's one of my pet peeves, is finding and studying for an exam and realize you didn't even study for the right thing. That drives me crazy when that happens. So have a look at these questions. See if you happen to know what this is. This is a very common scenario. This is one where you really do want to think about what the answer is, because you might run into this problem in the real world. I know that because I've been in the real world and I know how they do things. That's really good. And before we get the answer, I want to, Marco in the chat room says, just passed my 1002 exam yesterday, got my certification today. Takes about 24 hours to be processed and confirm it. You really passed yesterday. They just confirmed it today, all because of you and your resources. You're awesome. I would say probably more because of you, but we appreciate the support too. And we were more than glad to help with whatever process you were going through. And you got in again just before the October 20th deadline. Congratulations on that too. That's fantastic news. Congratulations. And now, is there any chance I'll drop Network Plus practice exams? I'd love to get some done. My plan is to have some available in the coming months, but we don't have any specific dates at the moment. So keep an eye out. Who knows? Let's talk about this question, though, which says, a company would like to make a web server available for anyone on the internet to access. Which of the following would be the best location for this service? Is it VPN, cold site, screened subnet, VLAN, or internal network? Show the results here. Again, we're not sure. We don't know. The ones that I think are going to be gimmies sometimes turn out this way. I thought this one was a gimme, but I think part of the problem, as some people alluded to in the chat room, is some of the names have changed. We'll talk about this in a moment. 27% of you, if we go with the plurality, is C, screened subnet, which is difficult to say. Screened subnet is what most people chose. The bulk of you chose. 27% of you chose. 22% of you chose cold site, and 22% of you chose VLAN, tie for second place. 16% of you chose VPN, and 12% of you said internal network is what you would use. Well, if you have a web server, you want to have people on the internet access that web server, you want to be sure that you're keeping them away from your private network. This is really the point. But there still needs to be security. We have to maintain and secure this system, but we also don't want it inside of our network. So where do we put it? We put it on a screened subnet. The term screened subnet in the world of CompTIA is a relatively new one in the last few years. You may have heard this referred to as a DMZ, or demilitarized zone. But now we've sort of taken the military terms out of this, and we're referring to it as a screened subnet, which sounds a little nicer, I guess, than a DMZ. This way, you can still have your internal network over here with your internal systems and your internal servers and your internal email. But you still can have people coming into your internet link, but instead of allowing them into the private sanctum, into your back cave of internal network, you instead want to send them out to the public side of your network, which is the screened subnet side, which allows you to have your own set of switches and servers and all other things that people on the internet can access. But all of those people would never hit your internal network. They would be redirected, usually in your firewall, to a separate device over on screened subnet. So that is what I know DMZ is so much easier to say. So, but it is there. The DMZ is the previous term. If you talk to some old school people about your network configuration, your firewall configuration, they will probably tell you, oh yeah, we put it in the DMZ. It's so easy to say. So you'll see a number of people, though, tell you, and especially CompTIA tell you, screened subnet is what that particular location is. That's the one you should know for your exam. That's the one that's in the exam objectives, although the exam objectives do specifically say previously known as DMZ. So they're trying to ease us into that name change, I guess. That's how that works. That's our answer, screened subnet. Answer C again came up as the answer. You can see that 22% of you chose VLAN, and a VLAN by itself is not something that you would put a web server on to be accessed from the outside. It needs to probably be a VLAN that's in a safer place, such as a screened subnet. VLAN is just a container. Where do you keep that container to make sure that it's safe? You would put it in a screened subnet. 20% of you said cold site. A cold site is a disaster recovery facility that effectively is an empty warehouse. And if you have a disaster, you bring all of your equipment into that cold site, set up your own equipment, plug everything in, and now you're up and running. You would not put a web server at a cold site. Not what you use a cold site for is a web server that anyone in the internet would access. We also have 20 or 15% that said virtual private network, or VPN. A virtual private network is great for encrypting data between two sites or between a user and a site, but a VPN, not very useful for people that want to access a web server. Imagine if you had to start VPN software every time you wanted to perform a Google search. That would not be very good either, and be able to have those in. So not exactly what I was working through either. And an internal network, 11% of you said the internal network, that's definitely not where you want to put a publicly accessible service. Is on your internal network. We want to avoid the network. In the chat room, Tostek says, isn't that the other way around? The VLAN is a container the screen subnet would fit into? It is not. Screen subnet can consist of many, many, many VLANs, many, many, many devices. It's a very large, you can think of it as a logical section of the network. From the perspective of a firewall, it's sometimes referred to as a zone for your zone-based firewalls. So it's a section where that zone is where you would put many, many VLANs, many, many services available to people, or just one single VLAN and one single server. Completely up to you. And working through those. So that is the answers. Screened subnet is what we were looking for, and 32% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you are watching this video for Continuing Education Unit Credit, or CEUs, then the CEU can be provided to you as a webinar category CEU, which means you can only collect a number of these to go towards the renewal of your certification. But I'll be more than happy to send you an email that certifies that you were here watching this on either a live stream or on a replay. I'll take both of those. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. On the subject line, put the October 2022 Core 2 study group, and in the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, which is, what should we make it? We're going to make it screened subnet switch, because just saying screen subnet's not difficult enough. Our super secret code word of the month is screened subnet switch. Put that in the body of the message on a line by itself, hit enter a couple times. And then if you'd like to put anything else in that message to me, because I read through every single one of these, you're more than welcome to. I love reading the messages you send in. And although I'm not able to individually respond back to them because I get hundreds of these requests in a month, it's one of those where I do like reading through the things you send. So feel free to put them into that list. Again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address on the subject line, put something that tells me that this is October 2022 Core 2, and in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, screened subnet switch. Now I have to say that over and over when I'm working on those. We've got time for another question. Before we do, I want to thank Tortilla Girl in the chat room with the $10 super chat, who says, just began studying my journey for the 1101, transitioning careers from a 911 dispatcher into IT. Is it 911 or 911? I think it's 911, isn't it? Is that how we're supposed to say it? Because people will get confused. There's not an 11 button on the phone. When there's something that happens, people get a little crazy. So you have to tell them 911. Tortilla Girl's telling me, yes, that's correct. Thank you for the content, Professor. You're more than welcome. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Best of luck with your 1101 studies. We're here to help. Make sure you join the Discord. There's somebody who can always help with your questions along the way. They do some really good things there. And of course, the 1102, what we're studying today for is going to be a good one for you to know as well. Let's do some more questions. I have another. This one's pretty good. This is definitely an 1102 question because it asks this troubleshooting question for everybody, since we mentioned troubleshooting. A user has received this error. Quote, the controller does not have enough resources for this device. End quote. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Again, in English, a user has received this error. The controller does not have enough resources for this device. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would you move USB devices to different ports? Would you reinstall the OS? Would you add more RAM? Would you upgrade the BIOS? Or would you restart the computer? There's your options. This question asked, a user has received this error. Quote, the controller does not have enough resources for this device. End quote. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be to move USB devices to different ports, reinstall the OS, add more RAM, upgrade the BIOS, or restart the computer? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure it out. We'll all know what it is eventually. Don't worry. And you are very smart. You're smarter than I am for this particular question, because I had to do some research on this one just to do the video. It's kind of the fun part about the A+ is it's constantly evolving. They're constantly adding new content. They're constantly putting different things in. And sometimes you'll get one of these corner cases that you haven't run into, and you're thinking, whoa, I need to do some research on that one. And this is a fun one to do some research on. Of course, if you are troubleshooting, and this is a troubleshooting question, you'll need to think about the troubleshooting process as well. Would be good. That's another good place to go. Is work with some other folks who are working through these to know what it is. A lot of you have locked in your answer though, which maybe this is one of those cases where I think it's going to be difficult and ends up being easy, just like the ones that I think are going to be easy and they end up being difficult. This is probably the reverse of that. To see how we do with this question. This is, I think, if you ever work through this, the cold site topic I saw in Security Plus, it's in the 1102 as well. Yep, it's in there. Wouldn't have put it in there had it wasn't in there. So absolutely, it's all in there. You've all locked in your answers now, so let's see what you think the right answer is. The question again asked, a user has received this error. Quote, the controller does not have enough resources for this device. End quote. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Is it move USB devices to different ports, reinstall the OS, add more RAM, upgrade the BIOS, or restart the computer? Should it just be all of the above? Wouldn't that be easier? Let's see what you think the answer is. You think the answer is 34% of you, add more RAM. The controller doesn't have enough resources. We think RAM is the resources, so that's what we're going to do is add more RAM. 30% of you say restart the computer. Have you tried turning it off and back on again? That is ultimately, shouldn't that fix everything? But in this case, it doesn't. So that's not our right answer. 23% of you said move USB devices to different ports. Is that the resource? Is that the thing? 11% said upgrade the BIOS. That's something I do just to see if I can break things. I try to upgrade the BIOS. And lastly, we've got reinstall the operating system. Well, if you got a day you can set aside, that's a good idea too. You can maybe work through those. I don't think if you break these down, we'll break down every single one of them, but only one of these answers could ever work to resolve this problem. So this is not one of those where, well, it could be this, it could be something else. Actually, in this case, only one of these would work. Which one would work? Well, it would be important and useful if we knew what resources it was talking about. Does Windows tell you what resources it's talking about? It does not. It sort of does. What I didn't put on the message here, what I didn't put in the question, was the title bar of the dialog box that held the message. The controller does not have enough resources for this device. That title bar says USB controller resources exceeded. The reason I didn't put that in the question is because it would have given away the question. And in fact, you're lucky if your users are going to give you any error messages anyway. Here's one thing. By the way, this is really an aside because I've been working through a number of technical support issues with a number of things lately. The way that you get on the good side of your tech support folks is when you submit a ticket. I'm not just saying the ones to me, but the ones I submit. I'm submitting a help desk ticket. Always attach a screenshot. Here's what I'm seeing on my screen. Here's the screenshot. Always, always attach a screenshot. But in this case, there's a lot of different controllers in a computer. There's a hard drive controller. There's a memory controller. There's a USB controller. There's a serial controller. There's all kinds of controllers. So it really helps if you can say USB controller resources exceeded. It's talking about endpoints. Endpoints are these resources that we're dealing with. And to fix this, the endpoints are effectively every USB device needs a set of endpoints to be able to work. And if it is a simple USB device, it needs a small number of endpoints. And if it's a more complicated USB device, like maybe you've got a mouse, a very simple USB connection that needs a fewer number of endpoints than perhaps an audio controller, an audio connection. I have an audio connection with multiple inputs, multiple channels, input and output. It's going to use a lot of different resources. Those you can think of them as buffers. When you plug in a USB device, we have to have a certain number of buffers available to communicate back and forth to the computer. And if we're plugging in a lot of USB devices, the controller only has a certain number available. And you can plug in a device and you might go over that number and you'll get this error message on your screen. So the way you fix this, oddly enough, unplug the thing you just plugged in or unplug one of the USB devices and move it to a different USB interface on your computer, which is, we hope, going to be serviced by a separate USB controller, because there's not just one USB controller in a device. There's often multiple USB controllers, and then you could probably move it to a different part of the computer motherboard or a different part of the system or a different USB interface, and it will use a different set of resources in that resource pool, different set of those buffers. So that's why you'll see if you can group together all the USB 2.x devices, put them all on their USB 2.x controller, because it's only going to have a certain number of resources available, endpoints available. If you're using USB 3.x devices, that 3.1, 3.0, or 3.1 controller probably has more endpoints available, and you'll want to move all of those devices over to the section of them. So this is the case where it's difficult in Windows to get information on endpoints. There's no easy way to see how many of these endpoints you happen to be using on a particular controller, and it's difficult to know how many endpoints are required for the USB device that you happen to be plugging in. I bet if you even ask the folks at the manufacturer, you call the help desk and say, I'm about to plug in this mouse, how many endpoints does it use? They'll be like, I don't know, plug it in, see if it works. That's the answer. So if it doesn't work, unplug it and plug it in somewhere else. It seems like that would not be the right answer, but that's exactly the answer we were looking for in this case, is we want to unplug it and plug it into a different place. Answer A, move USB devices to different ports, was the right answer. 22% of you got that one right. That was the one we were looking for. Now, why isn't it add more RAM? That's because the controller does not have enough resources for this device is an error specific to USB connections. It's not a memory error. If it was a memory error, it would say out of memory. Then you'd know it was memory. In this case, the resources that we're dealing with at the controller are USB resources, and adding more memory is not going to increase the number of resources available on a USB controller. We have others in here. Restart the computer. I thought turning it off and back on again was the right answer. Isn't that always the right answer? In this case, it is not, because when you restart the computer, all of the controllers still have the same number of endpoints available, and all of your USB devices are still using the same number of endpoints. It doesn't change that process at all. You'll simply get the error on your screen again. So that didn't work. Upgrading the BIOS. You probably never want to upgrade the BIOS of your computer unless there's really a good reason to do so. And there's nothing with this error that tells us your USB or your BIOS that you have in your system needs to be upgraded. That's not working right. That you need a better BIOS or something. You need a bug-fixed BIOS. But we don't know that the problem that we're seeing here has anything to do with the BIOS. In fact, it's very specific to USB. It's probably not BIOS related. So upgrading our BIOS doesn't help us, and that's a pretty dramatic change on a system. Upgrading the BIOS could break something else. You could break your whole system by upgrading the BIOS. So not something you want to jump to as your best next troubleshooting step. And lastly, 2% of you say reinstall the operating system because that fixes everything. But now that we know this problem is related to hardware, upgrading the operating system or replacing it or reinstalling it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't help at all. The only way to address this issue of the controller does not have enough resources for this device is to move your USB devices around so that you have more of those endpoints available to use by your USB devices. That's what this is different, by the way, than USB power that some of you in the chat room are talking about as well, because every USB device needs power. Each controller is able to provide a certain amount of power for those USB devices. Not only could you exceed the number of endpoints, you could also exceed the power draw for USB. Fortunately, Windows does provide inside of Device Manager a very easy way to view how much power is being used by a particular controller. So you can at least view those statistics and do troubleshooting. This one's dealing with endpoints, though. It's not about power. It's about how much memory buffers are available inside of USB to be able to operate. So answer C, adding more RAM will not help us. Reinstalling the operating system won't help us. Upgrading the BIOS won't help us. And even restarting the computer is not going to help us. The only thing that will help you is by in having more resources available, more endpoints available for USB. And the best way to do that is to absolutely use the option to move these devices around to a different USB interface. That's what you want to use. Seems odd, doesn't it? That's the right answer, but that's exactly what you have to do to resolve this problem. That's going to be one where you walk up to the desk and they go, I don't know, it's giving this error. And you can unplug the USB, plug it into a different connection, and then all of a sudden it works. That's sort of how it goes whenever you start working through that. It's sort of the way that troubleshooting works. Oh, I'm glad I'm here. All right, there you go. That'll be $150, please. You know, it's not knowing that it's not the actual process of moving. It's not the time spent moving. It's the time you spent learning what you need to move that costs so much money. That's the one that always works. Let's see. I know we're at the top of the hour, so we're well over the top of the hour at this point. I do want to let you know, this is a bit of an announcement, I guess. It's already been there for about a week, but our Core 2 practice exams are available for the 2011-02. A lot of you have been asking, where's the practice exams? Where can I get some practice exams? Well, now they're available. The 2011-02 practice exams, 380 pages long, 3 separate practice exams with 90 questions in each one. It's 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple-choice-based questions in each one of those. It's available as a PDF, and shortly, I hope this weekend, I will have the physical book available so I can confirm that is exactly what we're hoping for. That book will be available. I'll also have physical versions available on my website after those are available. So it gives you some options for doing this. Let's look at what this might be. Let's go through a question that I have in my practice exams. Let's do A16. A16 asks, Each time a user starts a specific corporate application, a page of disclaimers and usage requirements is shown before the login prompt. Which of the following would best describe this page? Would it be a splash screen, an acceptable use policy, standard operating procedures, or a topology diagram? So that's the question that's in my book. So you have, even though it's a book, if you had the physical book, you could look at a quick answer, which would just tell you A, B, C, or D, would let you know which one of those it happens to be. But I also have a link in here because it's a PDF. That's a link where I can click and go directly to that page. So you don't have to scroll through and then scroll back. You can simply just click. It's just a hot link I have right in the book. In this case, I'm going to use the second hot link here, which is the details. So I'm going to click this. It's on page 52, but that doesn't matter to you because you're just going to click. And this takes me right to page 52 where it shows me the question again. And it tells me the answer is A, splash screen. And it gives, of course, a description of why that is the correct answer. Now, if you're like me and you're studying one of these practice exams, the mini practice exams available, I get the questions wrong all the time. So if the questions are wrong, why did I get it wrong? I need more information. Unfortunately, a lot of practice exams don't tell you why a question is wrong. But in my book, every single incorrect answer is fully documented to tell you why that is not the one you should have chosen. So that if you did get it wrong, you're learning about why you got it wrong. And perhaps even more useful is that you'll understand an acceptable use policy. This is what an AUP is. A standard operating procedure, that's what an SOP is. A topology diagram, this is what a topology diagram is. What's great about that is even if you get the question right, I highly recommend you go through the wrong answers just so you're familiar with the technologies that were asked in that question. That's an important part of the learning process. And how are you supposed to know what you did wrong unless you have some documentation that tells you? And then lastly, if you have no idea what the question was even talking about, we've all been there, there's a QR code and a link right in the book that takes you directly to the video where that particular question came from. So you can learn more about the technology that was part of the video. That's where we're focusing, is providing that level of detail on every question. And now that we're done with that, in my PDF reader, I have a back button. Your PDF reader probably does as well. You click the back button, and we're back to where we started. And we can go to the next question that's on the list. That is my practice exams book. I spent lots of time writing the questions in the practice exams book, making sure that every single question and every single answer was directly related back to a current version of the exam objectives. You will not find outdated information in my practice exams. You'll not find things you've never seen before, because everything in my practice exams comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, which, by the way, they stick to very closely. You can find those practice exams on my website. There's also bundles there with other practice exams and course notes, so you can save a little money if you buy multiples of those together. Of course, I've been talking about these exam objectives this entire time, but I didn't tell you where you could get them. They're out on the CompTIA website. You can go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA Exam Objectives, takes you right to the page. You can also go to professormesser.com/objectives. That will take you right to a link that takes you right to the page. So you've got a couple of ways to get there. What's nice about the exam objectives is they are very detailed. They tell you everything you need to know to pass the exam. Everything's there. In fact, let me pull up a copy of the exam objectives for the 220-1102 exam. This is extensive. A lot of people I've mentioned, they've shown up and said, well, I didn't do well on my exam. They asked me a lot of things I wasn't ready for, I didn't recognize. And when that happens, I ask, well, what topics from the exam objectives did they ask you weren't prepared for? And they said, well, I didn't really look through the objectives because I just assumed it was a very broad explanation of what we needed to know. They had no idea that every single bullet for every single thing that could be asked on the exam is in these exam objectives. It's almost like cheating, except CompTIA gives this to you. And as it turns out, it's really nothing like cheating, but it does focus your efforts to know what things you do need to know and what things you don't need to know. They are all there. What's also nice about this is that this is a great checklist for your studies. You should read through all of this before you get started and then use it as a checklist as you go through whatever study method you're using. When you've crossed through every single bullet, you're ready to take the exam. Now, what other resources in the internet might tell you on these exam objectives is that CompTIA might go outside the scope of these objectives. So they give you things outside the scope as well, which is really just a way of saying we were too lazy to remove those questions from an earlier version. CompTIA does not deviate from this list. They stay directly on this list. And as I've told people over and over, if you know everything in the objectives, you're going to pass your exam. That's how easy it is. That's how focused you can be. Stick to the objectives and you will be fine. Find those at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month, or do we? For the past few years, you've noticed every month we've been doing a study group every month. I find a way to make it happen every month. And I have finally hit a month where I'm not able to make it happen. So the next study groups we do for A+ will be December the 6th and December the 8th. The month of November, we unfortunately will not have any live video-based study groups, I guess, to go through. I'm trying to find a way to do an audio one. But there's nothing weird or concerning about this. It's really a scheduling problem on my side. So you can put the blame on me. I'm just not able to fit it into what has turned out to be a very chaotic month. But we're absolutely back in December, and we'll keep doing these as long as we possibly can continue to do them. As long as you keep watching them, we're going to keep doing these. So although we're taking November off, if you will, we're not really, but I'm still doing stuff behind the scenes. We won't have any live streams. But come back in December. We got lots of great live streams after that point. We can talk about how your Thanksgiving went for all of us, as it turns out, and see what options might be available. And if you're ever wondering when is the next event going to be, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar, and it will tell you what all of the events are that are listed in our calendar. We do the first hour of these study groups is you answering questions, but we're not done yet. We have our after show where for the next hour or so, I'll take your questions and we'll see what questions you might have about the A+, about certifications, about IT, or about the world in general. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams available on our website at professormesser.com/1102success, or simply use the links that are at the top of our website. We can also, if you're in the U.S. or Canada, make sure you get the vouchers, the discounted voucher, and your free exam hacks ebook at professormesser.com/voucher. And if you want to find us online, you type in professormesser.com/Twitter/YouTube/Instagram/LinkedIn/ whatever it happens to be. And if I'm there, it will take me there. Take you there. And if I'm not there, then you'll get a message saying no such page exists. So that's where you can easily find what we're looking for. If you really like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'm not beyond begging. I'm fine with that. Subscribing to the channel would just be over the top. So if you want to consider either one of those, we would appreciate it. I had a meeting with my YouTube representatives this month. And it's fantastic because they see your thumbs up, they see your subscriptions, and they want to spend time with me to make sure that my channel is giving you the educational material you want. And although I can't say anything yet, we are working with them right now on some very exciting things for education and to make these courses even better on YouTube. And I can't wait to show you what we're working on. And I would not be able to do that without your help and your support. Thumbs up is free, subscribing is free, and it's a great way to support what we do here. Thank you for those of you that have done that already. Well, thanks for being here for this first half. Stick around for the after show. We'll take questions from the chat room. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, let's take a sip of Java. Let's get our graphics straightened out on the screen. That would be nice. There we go. And let me work on my lower thirds so that they are correct. We'll make that happen. And just like that, we are ready for the after show. In our after show, I take your questions. If you're on my website right now, then you're watching the video on professormesser.com/live. If you are watching this on YouTube, then you already see there's a chat there. It's the same chat. So you don't have to go over to my website. If you're on YouTube, just stay where you are. It's the same chat that's going back and forth. Some folks are even asking, are the objectives in the books as well? Well, not specifically. The objectives are freely downloadable from CompTIA. There's no reason for me to duplicate that process, but they follow the objectives. Just like my videos follow the objectives, my course notes follow the videos. Therefore, the course notes follow the objectives in that order. Makes it a little bit easier to keep track. You can, of course, on my website, get course notes, practice exams. You can download the audio course available on my website, or you could get a downloadable video course. So you don't have to go to YouTube, or maybe you prefer being offline. Question in the chat room, Nutty Ox asks, are the audio MP3 files just the audio from the YouTube videos? Yes, they are the audio from the videos, except they're downloadable in an MP3 format. That's what they're for. They're designed to be an offline version of the audio flavor, the audio version of those video courses. Absolutely. Garoshi in the chat room. I know some people have answered this one, but I'll add my couple of cents into this. My certificate expired in 2018. Can I get CEUs to renew it, or should I redo from scratch? Well, if the certification has expired, then there's nothing to renew, unfortunately. The expiration being in 2018 also puts it a while back in the term, at least relative to the certification world. You know, a couple of years is a very long time for certifications. 2018 would be a really long time. I'm afraid your best choice here would be to redo it from scratch. Although don't take my word as the final word for something like that, especially when there's so much work involved. It'd be worth opening a ticket with CompTIA to ask them, hey, I know this expired, but do I have any options available? I'll take the Cert Master CE in a day if you just give me the opportunity to do it. You can beg to have that piece done. So that I would do first. They then could say, no, there's nothing you can do, and then you have to go through that point. But that's what I would recommend is letting them go through that process. I want to thank Arthur Brockington in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Tech Mate, Arthur, to you as well. And Kelapophis. Well, let's not go too far. He does say, I have an A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. All three, thanks greatly to your material. There's a $50 special on the CySA Plus CS0003. Any recommendations to prepare for this? Thank you for all you do. Yeah, for those of you not aware of this, and might be worthwhile to mention, is that the CySA Plus exam, some people think of this as the next level up from a Security Plus. It's one of the CompTIA Security Administrator certifications. They have a beta. They don't often do betas for A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus. In fact, I don't think I've ever done open betas for any of those three. But for some of the less used or perhaps more specific certifications, they do betas for this, where instead of paying $350 to take the exam, you pay $50 to take the exam. Hello, that's not a bad deal. It is a beta. So there is a set of exam objectives for this, and if they are not currently available, they will shortly be available so that you can use those to prepare. That's really all they give you during that process, because it's a beta, there's no books, there's no videos, there's no courses, there's nothing you can study from. The exam objectives is the only thing you can go with. Also, during these betas, you may think $50, no problem, 90 minutes, I'm in and out. But on a beta, they tend to go through many, many, many more questions than you might normally get. In many cases, they go through the entire pool of questions. And I have taken a beta for an exam. It was not a CompTIA beta, but it was another company's beta exam. I went into the room. I didn't come out for 4 hours, 3.5 hours, because I had to go through every question in the pool. I got out of there and people were hitting my phone like, where are you? What happened to you? I'm like, well, I went in a hole. It was for 3.5 hours. I pulled myself out. The benefit, though, is even though you don't have anything to study from, if you do come up with what CompTIA considers to be a passing score on this beta, you're CySA certified. So for $50, if you really know your stuff, you can sit for this exam and you're able to effectively be CySA certified for $50 if you do it right. Now, it's a tough exam. It's not one where if you know nothing about it, you can walk into it and pass it. That's not going to happen. But you absolutely can go through the exam objectives and see if it's something you need to know. There's a lot of new things on it as well that are different from the CySA 002. A lot of hands-on type things you need to know, a lot of utilities, a lot of pieces in there, and a lot of security topics are scattered around in there. So that's why I would recommend grabbing those exam objectives. If you don't know where those are, you can always send me a note from the Contact Us link or open a ticket if you already have a membership on the site, and I'll point you in the right direction to find the things you need to find to be able to do that. There's just not a lot to study from. You just have to know your stuff already. That's probably the best way to do it. And so that's my best choice, Arthur. And thank you so much for the super chat and the Stargate reference. I always like those too. And you probably can tell from my videos, so appreciate that. Fode in the chat room with the $9.99 super chat. No specific message, no hello, how you doing, how's the family, but I'll take it anyway. I appreciate your support, and thank you so much for being on the live stream, and thank you for your ongoing support as well. We sure appreciate that too. Everything helps to keep this party going. Other questions from the chat room. I'm having issues getting VMs on my Apple Silicon Mac for labs. What do you recommend? I recommend, I'm going to show you, it's a bit of a challenge. When you move from the Intel platform to the new Apple Silicon CPUs, there's a number of transitions, but the one that was the worst transition that hurt me the most was my VM transition. So that was a big deal. And I'm going to share with you why that was such a bad transition. And I'm also going to share with you what I think is really the best VM software for Mac OS. It is commercial product. I don't make anything from doing this, but I think Parallels is probably the best integrated Mac OS virtualization software out there. I have also VMware Fusion. It's interesting you'd even bring this up. So I will show you my desktop. I'll show you my desktop. Do I want to do that? Yes, I do. I guess I do. I'm going to show you my desktop and more importantly, show you my dock because that's where we really find out what someone's made of. I had to remove all the games, not all the games, but I had to move a number of games from my dock before I showed it. So, of course, I got a lot here. I use a lot of different utilities. Pathfinder, I use instead of Finder for a number of reasons, mostly colors. There's a lot that's on here, but the ones, once you get here, Parallels Desktop is here and VMware Fusion is here. I do and use both of those. So that's pretty good to be able to run both of those. I find that Parallels is a much more integrated and seamless experience with Mac OS for you Mac OS users. But here, as you've probably seen on the screen, is I had, prior to moving over from the Intel side, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 different VMs that I was running on my machine. But when you move over to a completely new CPU, which is not Intel based, all of those old VMs are incompatible with this Mac. Oh, it's painful. Now, you can still get into the VMs and pull files out of it. So if you need to get in there and retrieve some documents that you have in there, you can do that. But every single VM that was on my computer is no longer compatible. I have to rebuild them from scratch. Now, to be fair, these were very easy to configure and get running, relatively speaking. But that's really the problem. Is that the key? But what's great is by doing this, I just load up Windows 11 and boom, I'm running Windows 11 in Mac OS. Let me start her up since we're here. Since we're here doing stuff, I'll just show you how this integration really works. So Windows 11 is set to run on my computer. I guess I should actually click the button to start it. Now we can see we got the rotating thing there. It's set up as a VM. It works normally as a VM. There's nothing different about it than anything else. I'm just going to run Windows 11 in a window on my Macintosh systems. There it is. So in fact, see behind the screen, it's still running and got everything there. So that's Windows 11. And it works exactly as you would expect it to work. It's like any other version of Windows. It works exactly as, in fact, everything that you see on my in any of my courses, in fact, this latest Windows course, all of the Windows came directly from a VM. All of the Active Directory videos I did came directly from separate Active Directory and workstation machines set up in a VM. It was all running on a Mac. That's the way I did it. So this is exactly what you should use as well. I've also used, on my Mac, I've used VirtualBox. So I've used all three of those. Really, those are the primary options available in macOS for virtualization. And I highly recommend Parallels just because it is just so smooth. Does Parallels run Linux on a Mac? It does. In fact, you didn't really, it's hard to see on here, but on here I was running Kali Linux. I was running the DVWA for my security stuff. You can look up what that happens to be. And I've got things like my web server testing system. I've got to rebuild that this weekend because it was running in a VM. Just lots of things I had to redo. I might run that on a separate machine that I have next to me so I don't have to rebuild it from scratch to have that all there. So I want to say that in that particular case, it works nice. Now, what's also nice about Parallels is if you are in Mac OS, you know that if you have a file like a document, you can right-click the file and say, run this application with this file. You can see applications in your list that live in a Windows VM. And when you click open this as that Windows program, it opens the VM, starts up the operating system, loads up your document, and you can run it in that VM. That's an easy thing to do. I think it's actually annoying. I turned it off because I didn't want Windows popping up. I wanted all of my Mac OS stuff popping up. But you have the option. That's how integrated it is. So just for those Mac OS users out there, that's what you would do. I also want to let you know whether you're a Mac OS user or a Windows user. Let me pop open a new browser window, and I'm going to visit a website called modern.ie. Modern.ie. It is a Microsoft Edge developer website. Now I took it off the wrong side of the screen. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There we go. Modern, like thoroughly modern Millie. That's a reference that goes nowhere. It is modern like the modern world. I am a modern man. The Microsoft Edge developer website is what that is. It will redirect you to a Microsoft URL when you type that in. And it is, although it says Microsoft Edge developer, don't be scared. Developers are okay. You can talk to them. You can take them to lunch. It's all right. Just don't spend a lot of time with them. But under the tools menu on the site is an option for virtual machines. Ooh, what could be in there? Let's click it. This says test IE11 and Microsoft Edge Legacy using free Windows 10 virtual machines you download and manage locally. So even if you're running in Windows or you're running in Mac OS, they have virtual machines here that are now all Windows 10. Look, they got Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 here too. Still, that's good. So for those of you that have up until October the 20th to finish your 10.02, you have Windows 7 for free, Windows 8.1 for free, and Windows 10 for free. It's right here. So you can download. In fact, let's choose Windows 10. And it asks you, what platform would you like to use? Would you like to use VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, which runs on Windows and Mac, Hyper-V, which obviously is a Windows technology only, and Parallels, there it is. For Mac, for me, I would choose Parallels, and I would just download the zip file, and it has instructions in there on how to unarchive it and install it into your virtual desktop that you happen to be using. And as they mentioned, free. Love the free part. So these are just available from Microsoft. The end-user licensing agreement for these effectively says these are for lab use. You may not use these for production uses, but as long as you use in the lab, you're perfectly okay using them. So I've already gone through the legalese just so you know that I'm telling you these are completely legitimate for you to use for your A+ studies as long as you only use those as A+ study tools. Don't use them as production units because they're a full-blown version of Windows. They do expire after 90 days. So they will disappear after 90 days, but you just come back to this website and re-download it and you got another 90 days. So there you go. That's the easy way to do it. That's what I would recommend. For those of you in Mac OS, Parallels is probably my first recommendation. The VMware is probably second on the list, and VirtualBox, although it's free, it's probably third best of those three. In Windows, I find that the VMware Player / VMware virtualization desktop software for Windows is probably a wee bit better than VirtualBox, but they're very close in Windows. So if you don't want to spend any money, VMware Player is what you want to look for. It's very hard to find on their website, but it is free. Don't pay for your VM software. And then if you don't want to go through that process or you just don't want to use that software, VirtualBox works great as well. Either one of those works well. Where can we download Kali Linux without getting a virus? Very good question. The answer is that you don't download a VM unless it's from a trusted source. Install instead, load up a virtual machine and create your own virtual machine with the installation media for Kali. That way you know exactly what's in there. It's a much more trusted way to do it than to use some other type of third-party VM. That's the best way to infect someone's system. Make up a VM that's already infected and then give it to them. Here's something for free. Load up this VM from this source that you've never heard of before and run it on your system. That's not what you want to do. So the Kali website absolutely is the best place to go for that. That's the one that will tell you everything you need. And you just install it from scratch. For those, it's very easy. In fact, a lot of these virtualization systems will even tell you, just download the ISO of the installation media, tell us where the ISO is, we'll take it from there. We already have predefined configurations in the virtualization software that configure exactly the right amount of memory, exactly the right amount of storage space. You just tell us where the ISO is, and we'll start the installation process for you. There you go. That's how easy it is. The Kali that's on my system that no longer works that you saw, that one probably installed in 10 minutes. That was downloaded and installed, and I was done in about 10 minutes. That was everything. That's where I would go. Other questions in the chat room. What are some of the major pure memorization points you recommend to start memorizing for the 1002? You know, a lot of these exams, really, to be fair, all of the exam is a memorization exercise. And I recognize there's some that are somewhat rote. For example, on the 1101 and 1001 exam, port numbers, for example. People get a little wrapped around the axle on port numbers because there's so many of them. And they've never used them before, and you just have to memorize them. That's the scenario. The 1002 doesn't have quite the same approach to content. It's more of an analytical exam where you have a problem with a Windows machine. It's sneezing. Therefore, what do? The screen looks funny. It's rebooting itself randomly. It's making a clicking noise. You smell smoke. Each one of those has a different troubleshooting process. So you have to know what the symptoms are and then what the troubleshooting is for that particular symptom. So that's why those videos are very specific to that. You'll notice in my videos, here is the problem, the symptom that has been described in the exam objectives, and here are the possible things you can do based on, again, the list of actions that is in the exam objectives. So they tell you exactly what you need to know. You don't have to go outside that scope. So I've seen a number of troubleshooting questions that talk about problems that aren't listed on the exam objectives. And those are things you don't need to know. So that might be where I would have you focus, is really go to the exam objectives, look through all of the symptoms they have listed there. In fact, let's bring up the 1002 exam objectives since we're here. I've got some here somewhere. I happen to work with the objectives. Let's go to 1002. There we are, 1002 objectives. Of course, I put them in a different place in the 1002 than the 1102. There we go. So here's our 1002 exam objectives. Let me go to the top. Maybe we'll make it 2 pages worth. The 1002 objectives. It's identical in structure and scope to the 1102, by the way. But if you start looking through here, for example, Microsoft command line tools, I need to know all these command line tools. That's a little bit, if you've never used these before, now we're doing some labs. Now we're going to the command line, we're typing some things in. Same thing for features in Microsoft operating systems, knowing how to use Task Manager, knowing how to use these system utilities. And when you get into the back of the exam where I was talking about software troubleshooting, they say, given a scenario, troubleshoot Windows operating system problems, here are the symptoms. So they give you a finite list of symptoms. You may think, well, 1 million things can go wrong inside of Windows. And you're wrong. There's 2 million things that can go wrong inside of Windows. But on this exam, you have to know slow performance, limited connectivity, failure to boot, no OS found, application crashes, and so on, all the way up to slow profile load. That's it. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 things that can go wrong in Windows. You have to know what those 11 things are and what you would do for those 11 things. In fact, they give you the common solutions. And you'll notice these common solutions are not tied directly back to the common symptoms, but I tie them back in my videos. So you'll know which way to go with that. Those are probably the most rote of the things that you would have to memorize. So that's what I would recommend is having a look at the exam objectives. They'll focus you. You just check off every time you think you've got that topic down, cross it off your list. You'll be good. That's all you have to know. George asks, have you considered branching out and doing a video series on Wireshark? I love Wireshark. As a former systems engineer for Network General and Palo Alto Networks, but Network General, I worked for Network General about 10 years as a systems engineer focusing on their protocol analysis tools and network management tools. So I am a packet guy. The first time somebody says, oh, I'm having a problem with my keyboard, I'm instantly thinking, do we need to take a packet capture? I need a packet capture. I need to watch. And of course, for anything across the network, the first thing I always say, did you get a packet capture? No? Then we're just guessing. The way that you can see anything happening in the world, the way that you can see anything happening on your network is with a packet capture. So I think Wireshark is one of those core skills that you should have. You should know how to use Wireshark and not just use it, not just I know how to capture a file or capture packets in Wireshark and save them. Well, that's good. That's a good first step. But now we have to interpret those packets. You'll spend 5 minutes learning how to capture packets, and you'll spend 5 years learning how to read those packets, quite literally. So doing a Wireshark course tends to lend itself to that because there's so much to talk about and so many things to go through. The problem, though, is just it has a limited approach, a limited scope, a limited number of viewers. So probably not my first choice in doing a series, but it's something that I love. I love using Wireshark, and I love looking at packets. So it's something I like to do. For example, for those not familiar, Wireshark just had a major release. Version 4.0.0 is out on the Wireshark website. Have you upgraded yet? What do you think? That's what you should go do. Load up the new Wireshark. See how it works for you. Some great features in Wireshark. It does kind of look like the Matrix. Stuff's just going by, just flowing through. But it's interesting once you, just like the Matrix, once you become familiar with all of these packets flowing by, it's remarkable how quickly you can start picking things out, because you'll start seeing what's normal and then you'll see weird things. And then you can stop the trace and really go into the details. So Wireshark is a packet capture tool. It's a protocol analyzer that does not just an exceptional job at capturing the data, but a more exceptional job at even displaying what's in that data. There's quite a number of expert systems they keep adding to Wireshark to make it even smarter and smarter so that you have to do less and less. You can get instant views of response time. It will rebuild things that have been transferred over the network. So if you capture an FTP or a file transfer, it'll put the file back together for you or show you the graphic back together. Being able to filter, being able to integrate and do voice over IP captures and then listen to the voice over IP when you're done. Those are in Wireshark. They're just built in. Great features. A lot of people don't even realize they're in there. But it is a powerful tool. I think if you spent times with Wireshark and Nmap, and if you had to pick two things, those are the two things I would pick. I would pick become intimately familiar with Wireshark, become intimately familiar with Nmap, and you're pretty much covered 75-80% of the things you need to know right there. In fact, the process of learning that level of detail probably even takes you up to a higher percentage of that. And you've seen some Wireshark in my courses. If you've seen an OSI model display in Network Plus or Security Plus, then you saw Wireshark there as well. Just a fantastic thing. And yes, the T-Shark and the command line that you can integrate with Wireshark, it's just it's just a fantastic tool. I mean, it's been around forever, and it has such maturity. It runs so well that's what I recommend for pretty much anything. It runs in Windows, it runs in Linux, it runs in Mac OS, it runs in anything. So absolutely load up Wireshark. It's a great way to do it. Oh, it doesn't really apply for the A+, but if you're a Network Plus or you're working on Security Plus, it can help you learn a few extra things that you're going to need to know for those exams. So that's what I would recommend is doing that. But as far as me doing a course on Wireshark, probably not. Well, first, there's limited certifications. You'll notice a lot of my courses are really focused around how can I get a cert, because our main purpose with our channel is to get you a job or get you a better job. And I think, although certainly a broad knowledge of technology can help you get a job or a better job, a more focused perspective of technology is getting you a certification. So you can prove to somebody that you have, at the very least, a certain baseline of knowledge that they can trust. And Wireshark, although there are a number of things that you can get with Wireshark from a certification perspective, I'm going with what employers are often asking for. So it's not at my top of my list right now. So sorry to be able to have that there. Can I get notifications for these study groups? I'm sad I didn't see this earlier. Oh, it's frustrating, isn't it? There's a few things you can do. One of them is to include or add my calendar, my events calendar, into your Google Calendar. And you can do that from professormesser.com/calendar. And that's one way that you can get updates. There's also a mailing list for these where I can email you the list of these so that you can easily know, oh, I just got an email, one starting up in 5 minutes. Those are available on my site as well. There's a link in the main page of my site on the sidebar that talks about adding yourself to those mailing lists. That's another good way to do it. Whenever I start getting into, now I really should make it easier to find these things, and I am working on that. There's a plan, there's a process. I'm going to make it even easier to find those things on my site, so you can find out, how do I participate in the study groups? Where's the Discord? What books should I put with this? What's free? What do I have to pay for? Just lay it out so that you can have an educated understanding of, here's what I can get and what I should be studying and what that takes to be able to get it there. That's what I would do. Having a home lab is so important. So you can load up Wireshark. You can load up these other utilities. You can start a virtual machine. You can load up the VM, get the Active Directory stuff going while it's going, capture packets from Active Directory. What do those look like? What is the protocol? What's happening inside of this? Are there DNS queries? What did the DNS queries look like? Wireshark will show you all of those. So anything you're doing in your lab, just make sure Wireshark's next to it, and spend some time capturing packets and spend some time looking at those packets. And it's interesting, although there is a bit of a learning curve, I think the curve gets a little flatter just as you start getting the core knowledge. And it's very valuable information to have. Anytime you can look through a trace file, and in fact, it's a skill where people are surprised and happy when you say you'll be glad to look through that trace file. Oh, I'm having a problem with this app. Well, just send me a trace file. We'll have a look at it. Like, oh, you read those? You know about trace files? Yes, I do. And we can step through them very easily, one by one, and be able to see exactly what's there. That's an easy way to do it. And fun to do as well. It's remarkable what you will see when you plug into a network and you start capturing packets. Very remarkable, the information that you'll be able to pull in. And it's one of those tools also that you're probably never going to know everything it does. It is so deep and so extensive in the number of features. But all you really have to know, if you know 50% of what Wireshark does, you probably know more than most people in the industry. That's how deep and detailed it happens to be. We'll take more questions. You can put them into the YouTube chat or the chat that's on my website. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Somebody earlier was asking about gaming. I just don't have a lot of time for it these days. And it seems I'm bouncing a lot between games. That's not very helpful for anybody. I get like an hour or two a night and I can play a game. And it could be anything from, I like the MMOs. I like a big universe to work in. So I'm usually in a World of Warcraft, working on something relating to what other things do I have up? I've been doing a lot of EVE Online. I've been doing a lot of Xbox in very large environments. Anything where I'm not having to reactively shoot, because the 10-year-olds are much faster with their reflexes than anybody else would be who has a mortgage. So those don't work for me very well. But I do a lot of Division 2. I do a lot of EVE. I do a lot of World of Warcraft. But if anybody has a good World of Warcraft guild, I'd love to know. It's hard to find a good one these days. So that's the quick answer for the gaming. Not too exciting to be able to have that there, but at least that gives you some options. I have tried the Eve Echoes. That's their mobile version of it. It has such familiarity, obviously, but the problem is time. The problem is the big problem. Yeah, I get the same problem on the first-person shooters. You get a lot of adrenaline, and your heart starts beating, and you're thinking, can this be good? Can this be good for me? When it gets to that level, it's too much. You get to a point where you want something that's more strategic, where you can pick and choose, and it's not quite as quick to the reflexes. You can set up a strategy and say, do this first, that second, this third, and that fourth. And I think we're in pretty good shape. I think, and part of the reason for that, I spend a lot of time creating content here. So whenever I do the gaming, I just want to get into it, get very focused, then I'm out of it. Yeah, I'm not going to be drinking coffee late at night just to keep up with the kids who have the reflexes. Not what I'm going to be doing. Then I'm up all night. I'm like, hi everybody, it's 4 a.m. Let's do a live stream. That's not what I want to do either. I think I want them to keep up with me. I think we can be smarter with our gaming and not quicker, and make them angry. It may work out that way. We'll see. We'll see with the games. Not much chance to do that anymore. I think it's a good mix. Don't spend all day every day. Don't spend 16 hours of your day studying A+. You need to split it up. Have a little bit of off time. Have a little bit of things to be able to do that. That's very nice to have that there. I guess, well, here's the Odysseus with the passive aggressive. Thank you, sir. It's like I'm at home again. I guess there's not practice questions for Network Plus. It may be passive aggressive, but it's absolutely accurate, Odysseus. That's true. There's not yet practice questions for Network Plus. These things, as it turns out, you probably are aware of this. I'm painfully aware of this. They don't tend to write themselves. I've tried. I've put an open screen. I've gone to sleep. I've come back, and it's still blank. They didn't write anything, so I have to write those. Now, the A+ was a big project. This A+ content that you've seen, that you're continuing to see, is from exam objectives that were released to us in December. So we're 9 months into this, of just finishing up, because it's 2 courses. It's 2 full and complete courses. And once we kind of get and sweep up a little bit and get the A+ stuff really stuck away, and we're done now with the A+, then I can adjust my focus. And you're absolutely welcome, Odysseus. Thank you for asking. It really was not. I was not picking on you. That's an absolutely valid question, and it's absolutely useful that people know about that. I would love to be able to have those available to you. All I can really tell you now is I hope to have something relating to Network Plus practice exams available to you in the coming months. That's the best I can tell you. I'd love to get some written. But I just mentioned, by the way, November's chaotic. Well, there's a whole month I'm going to, in there somewhere, I will be writing and doing and creating and doing. Will it be Network Plus related? We'll have to wait and see. We will have to wait and see. And there's a whole nother set of courses I want to be able to do that in my mind, I think I'm ready to start on. But in reality, there's a physics problem. It's a time motion issue. But once we get to that point, then maybe I'll be creating other content as well. We'll just have to figure it out. Along those lines, and this is a pretty good broad topic that I can speak to pretty well. Stan in the chat room says, do you need people skills to make it far into an IT career? I think, and so let's talk about people skills. Let's talk about people persons. That sort of made sense in my head when I thought it. It doesn't make sense when I say it. People skills is important for any career. The better you are at talking with people, the better you will be with anything that you do. You take your car to get it serviced. The better you are at talking with people, the better that experience is going to be. And the same thing applies, and perhaps even more so with technology, because operating systems, networks, IT security, it is such an unknown thing to anyone who's not part of it. They don't know what it takes to bring up a VPN connection. They don't understand about symmetric and asymmetric encryption. They don't know what port numbers are or how important they are to keeping everything running. And if you showed them a packet trace, they're wondering what in the world's wrong with you. So being able to be the universal translator that can take English language, whatever language you speak, and convert it back and forth into technical language, technical speak, can be very, very valuable. Not just to your normal day-to-day, but it can be valuable in your career. My career has taken its form. The very first technical job I got was probably not what you would think would be a personable type position. I worked in the basement of a building on campus, on my college campus, that had mainframes in the basement. And it was an older building. You know, these are state schools. So it's an older building, nice stone. In the basement, it's, 7-foot ceilings, not even an 8-foot ceiling. It's like a very narrow, short ceiling. It probably was even less than that now that I think about it. And we sat in front of consoles, and my responsibilities were first look at the consoles. Is everything moving? Yes. Okay, you're good. If things stop moving, call someone, and then they would fix it. So I was literally a babysitter for the mainframes. But you were also responsible for taking the type of storage that you would use, because mainframes didn't have a lot of storage as hard drives. They did have very big hard drives, but they not a lot of space. So the way that people would save money and save space, and in some cases the only way to get data into the mainframe was from tape. The 9-track tape, you ever see the old movies and the 9-track tape's up and it's spinning? That's the 9-track tape that I would maintain. There would be a message on the screen that would say, mount tape number 74. So I'd have to go back to the library. I'd find tape 74. I'd pull it out. I'd put it on the machine. I'd thread it through. I'd hit the button to start it, and then it would be mounted. That's something I had to do. On busy days, there would be constant tapes that were going back and forth. On the weekends, nights, you put one up every hour or so. And then there would also be a printer and a plotter, so people would need printouts. And working in a college, there were a lot of people, in this case with the mainframes and supercomputers, there were a lot of people doing weather studies. They would try to predict the weather using this computing power, as they still do today. And they would output the results of that onto a very detailed high-resolution plotter, or numerically onto a chain printer. It's sort of like a dot matrix, except it's got actual letters that it's hitting and putting onto that. Think of it as a very fast typewriter. That doesn't help either, does it? Think of it as a rotary phone. Doesn't help. Doesn't work. But that's what we would do, is take printouts off the printer, and we would put them either in bins outside, or we'd hand them to the people that printed them. If they stopped by and like, I just printed something, can you pull that off for me? But there's the person part. They're working on trying to decide how to model a hurricane. You're in this room trying to figure out how to keep everything running and then keep all the output and the input going. And then they show up at the window saying, hey, I got this job, did a printout. You go to the plotter, and there's this beautiful plot they did of where the hurricane's coming from. And I would spend extra time going, well, I just pulled this off the plotter. That's crazy. Did you do that? Did you program this? What are you doing? And they just love talking about it. Oh, yeah, we're doing this modeling. We're taking input from the last hurricane, and we're putting it into a set of data sets on the supercomputer. We're spending time crunching some numbers there, and then it creates for us a model of where we think the hurricane would go based on a number of criteria. And we're constantly tweaking this to see if we can take the data from an old hurricane, give our prediction, and see if that's really where it went. And we talk forever about those. But now I have a relationship. I built this conversational relationship with the people using the content. And so now whenever they would show up, I would see them coming in the door. I'm like, let me grab it for you. I'll go over and get the plot, get it for you, and hand them their output, because I knew that's what they were coming for. And it was great to have that I don't consider myself a people person in that particular regard. But having a conversation with someone is a very valuable skill. I got a job eventually, moved up the ranks, got jobs working in IT. And one of the jobs that really changed how I approach my job, a day-to-day job, was when I got a job working as a systems engineer. This is the previously mentioned Network General. At the time, Network General was their own company, very successful public company that had protocol analyzers. And at that time, there was no Wireshark. There was no other protocol analyzer out there. This was the hardware and the software that allowed you to see what was going on your wide area networks, your local area networks, and almost anything in between. Very, very valuable tools, very successful tool, currently owned by NetScout. So ultimately acquired, but at the time, our own company. And they put me into a position where I had to go to customers or potential customers, show them this product, and convince them that this is the technology they needed. So it was very often me giving a presentation in front of a room of people in a way that not only explained to them the way the technology works, but explained to them in a way that someone who'd never used the technology would understand, and a way that the management of this company would understand the value so that they would invest in this technology. And on top of that, I had to do it in a way that was not off-putting, that was something they were happy to listen to when I was giving them this description. Now, what was great about Network General is that the management of the company, was a huge number of them were old IBM guys. And they had an old school approach to presentations. And they felt that if you wanted to do a good presentation, we need to train you how to do a good presentation. This is the thing that changed my career. And this is the thing that can change your career in IT, is they sent me to a training class on how to talk to people. Literally, it was a class on how to do presentations. This was a class that was run by an organization, I don't even know if they're still around, called Decker. So I took their flavor. There's a lot of companies that provide this, and it was everything from best practices and how you should stand, and an overview of how to properly talk to people. But it also was one where they would record us, and then we play it back and, like, frame by frame, break down, this is what you did good, this is what you did bad, here's where you went wrong, here's where you could fix this, here's how you could do better. And it was fantastic. It was not technical at all. There's no networking in there. There's no security in there. We aren't talking about operating systems, but it had me for a day or two focus on how I approach and talk to other people. And that really gave me the ideas of how I could be better in this communication. Now, ultimately, my career direction went more into that conversational type communication role. I ended up getting moving from systems engineering into technical marketing, where you take marketing stuff that makes no sense and you translate it into technical marketing that makes sense for people doing technical things. And that was a lot of fun, because that was effectively a job where you just walked around and talked to people. I get on a plane, I fly to Chicago, I'd go to, I'd stay at the hotel next to the convention center. I go to the convention center for a trade show. I'd do a speech for 250 people. I would leave the convention center, go with a salesperson to a customer. We'd sit in a room with 5 of us and talk about what's new and what's coming and what's interesting and have you tried this yet? And then I would hop on a plane and go to the next city. And I'd do it again the next day. And just do that all week. And that was a job that was an international job. So that took me not only to places, that took me to Canada. That's how far I went. No, I went other places too, but mainly North America. But occasionally I'd go to Europe. We talked to people in Germany. We talked to people in the UK, in France. I went to Bangkok. I went to Australia. I went to Japan. You went everywhere in the world because technology is everywhere. And they needed somebody who could go to Japan, talk to, in the case of Japan, I wasn't talking to, I was primarily talking to the Americans that were stationed in Japan. So it was mainly a military type customer. So we talked to them about what they were doing with those technologies. And then I go to Korea, and then we just go to different places. So I didn't have to know other languages, thankfully, because that would just be a relative disaster. Thankfully, I could speak English everywhere I went. And most of the time we were talking to people who were either North American or had English as a second language, so it worked out okay. That was probably that process of learning just how to talk to people doesn't change your personality. It doesn't make you more of a people person. I really like being in my studio. There's nobody here. It's quiet. I can work on my content. Nobody calls me. I don't have to worry. Everything's done on email. And it's a very soothing environment for me. I'm not the kind of person who wants to be in a group of people to get this project done. I like working alone. A lot of people like working alone. A lot of people like working with others. You need to find the job that works best for you. But because I have this I want to be alone thing, I still was able to have the skills and the knowledge of how to talk to other people when I'm out in a group, because that was my job. I want to go meet with them. And in fact, I met amazing people. I loved being a systems engineer. I loved meeting different people every day, finding out what they did, finding out it was interesting to kind of get a perspective of the world and meet some really, really great people while you were doing it. Now, that I think is a real game changer if you're in technology. The better you are at communicating with others, the higher up you're going to move, and the faster you will move up, the faster you'll be able to level up, because there's so few people who can do that well. So it is a skill that really does help. If you have not created a podcast, you've not created videos, then you may say to yourself, how am I ever going to do this? So I'll give you a perspective of how this process goes, because it doesn't start with you being able to do a 2-hour live stream and be able to communicate across this microphone and talk to people who are on the internet. I will tell you about a meeting I had. One of the very first meetings, I was given this role as a technical marketing manager. No, director of technical marketing. I don't know why. I just demoted myself, but I was director of technical marketing because, these titles make a difference. No, they don't. But that's what they called me. They made a difference to other people, and that was what was important. I was heading from one place to another, a trade show to the airport. I don't remember. We were on West Side Highway or something in New York City. We were somewhere, heading somewhere. And I had all these notes because I had a meeting where I had to talk to analysts. Part of the job was that not only was I talking to customers, I was talking to Gartner. I was talking to these third parties that have a very big say on where your technology fits in the industry, and they have a very big say on what they tell their customers on how your technology is working. So if you're a corporate customer, you probably use Gartner to help you determine where should we go with our technology. If you're a manufacturer, you're hoping to work with Gartner to prove that your technology is good enough for them to put onto their Gartner lists, into their big magic quadrant. And so my job was to talk to these analysts. And so I had all these notes, and I got in the back of the taxi. I'm like, take me to the airport, sir, kind sir. And he said something. He may have cursed at me. I don't know. It was New York. Like, that's what you want. And off we went. And I'm on the phone. Hi, how you doing? Never done one of these before. Let's see how this goes. So let's talk about, and then we hit a bump, and all my notes went everywhere. And all these cards are in the back of this taxi. And now I have to give a cogent presentation to people who can make decisions about the entire company you work for and how it fits into the big scheme of things without having any of the notes available and never having done one of these meetings before. I think it went awful. I think it was a horrible, horrible meeting. It did not go well. I was nervous. I was frustrated. I was flustered. But they had questions, and I was able to answer them. And when you get into those roles, there's some very common answers that you can give to be able to provide these things. And ultimately, we were able to do a follow-up meeting, and everything went fine. But I got off of that call, and I immediately called my boss. And I said, all right, that may have been the last day on the job, because I talked to the analysts, and it was a disaster. And she said, no, it wasn't. You're fine. You're still better than what most people would have been able to do talking about these technologies. and the next one's going to be better anyway. So, and she was right. And eventually you get into the mode of things. And eventually you meet, now that you've met these people on the phone, the second time you talk to them, you know them. Oh yeah, we talked last week. Sure. Yeah, that was when I was in the back of the taxi and I had index cards everywhere. And they go, oh yeah, it sounded like you had index cards everywhere. You just own it. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about stuff now. I'm not in the back of a taxi. Let's talk about more things. And we did. And everyone went fine, and we had a great relationship from that point on. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have frustrating times trying to do this human-to-human intervention thing, this talk back and forth, the interpersonal skills. It becomes a challenge with technology, but I can tell you it's a very valuable set of skills to have. And if your company can send you to training for this, that would be great. I don't know if they do a lot of these days. Maybe a lot of it's online. But any type of skills you can get along those lines are great. The way that I really can tell if somebody's been through this type of training before, if you've ever seen a picture of a corporate group, you know, here's the project team that handled project X, and they show these people here, and they're always standing funny. They got their hands in front of them, or they're got their hands behind their back. That's how I know they've never been to one of these training classes, which teach you to simply put the hands at the side. Put the hands at the side of you. And I will tell you, I've mentioned this in other study groups, it feels weird to do that. You're standing in front of a bunch of people. It feels like you should be doing something with your hands. Should I be gesturing? Should I put them in my pocket? Should I put them in front of me like I'm setting a pick in basketball? That's the one that always gets me. Like, what are you protecting? It's sort of psychological. Like, well, I'm protecting myself from the crowd. And that's really what your brain is doing to you. It's trying to put a barrier up between you and this crowd. They say, no, just put your hands at your side. Relax. And give me 5 minutes of this conversation with these hands at your side. After the first minute, you're like, is it weird that my hands are at my side? But it's not. When you watch the video of you giving this presentation, it looks perfectly normal. And so those are just weird little nuances and things you learn through the years on how to communicate with other people. And everybody feels awkward. This was the thing. I was in a room full of other systems engineers, some that were extremely successful in the company, some that may have just started. We all were awkward. And nobody likes this. It's that statistic you always hear that and if you poll people, they will tell you that they're more frightened of speaking in front of a group of people than being dead. They would rather be deceased than to do a presentation in front of people. I think that's probably a pretty accurate statistic, which means, by the way, that at a funeral, the person in the casket is actually where they would rather be than someone who's speaking at the funeral. That's how freaked out we are about doing anything with public speaking. But I think public speaking is a very valuable tool. I think it's one that will increase the velocity of your move up in your career. And I think more than anything, if you can put yourself in the mode that at any time you might be pulled out of your chair to stand in front of this room and talk for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour about a particular topic, that you'd be willing to do that and able to do that. And that's where I am. Well, this after show is a good example of that. How long does it take me to answer this one question? That's a really good example of where it is. You just become very familiar with it. And the first time you do a presentation in front of a group, it's not great. The second time, it's a little bit better. And the third time, it's better after that. And you just keep going and doing it over and over. And after a while, it's just normal. When I was doing that every day and hopping on a plane and going places and talking to people, it's just automatic. Like, you don't want me to talk, right? I'm in. Can we do an hour? I can tell you, we can talk for an hour. We can talk for 3 hours. You get in the mode. And I think that's a great skill to have. There is a lot of people, acting classes might be a good way to do that. One set of skills, I'm not sure how they do it these days. Toastmasters here in the United States is a group that does speaking. You practice public speaking. That's their name, Toastmasters. That's not going to help you. Let's put it up on the screen, shall we? There we go. There's Toastmasters website, Toastmasters International. And it's all about this. Most clubs are meeting online. Great. And they tell you, What is Toastmasters? Do you want to practice public speaking, improve your communication, and build leadership skills? With Toastmasters, you can break barriers, not your budget. Learn more about the history of the organization and our methodology to help maximize your potential. Click here to learn more. That's a great resource. That's one you can use. And you meet with people, and you're online, and they'll tell you what you did right, and they'll tell you what you did wrong. It's valuable, valuable to be able to have that. So that's another resource you might be able to find to do this and work through those. George in the chat room has another very good point, and it's one that I've used time and time again, is there's a lot of really great books out there that can help you with this, that can put your mind into the right place. Even if you don't use all the skills that are in these books, they definitely can put you in the right place. A good example, and one that's been around forever, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's the one you always hear about when you get into the world of motivational speaking, if you will. But there's really good tips in these. And they're on the Amazon. You can find everything you need. Carnegie did the How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's been around forever. There's audiobooks and paperbacks, and you can find all of them. And it's sort of old school in the way that they approach things, but the basics of the knowledge you're getting there can really be applied to almost anything, even today. I also like a lot of good books that kind of help you with, where do I go with these technologies? How do I, not necessarily, there's some great books, The Power of Positive Thinking and some of those others are really good. But some of the newer books that even go into the world of today's technologies and how to approach the world with those are really good as well. I have some. I have to find these in the Amazon and hunt them down for you. But I think there's some, Tom Peters is ones that I've really enjoyed reading through the years. And if you're at all into having your own company, or how to make your company sort of stand out, he's fantastic. His books are fantastic along those lines. The very first one I ever read from him was The Pursuit of WoW, not referring to World of Warcraft, oddly enough, but I think it still applies. The Pursuit of WoW is a great one because it's these little stories about, here's a company and why they're awesome. And he breaks down for a company, he breaks down, for instance, a plumber. Here's a plumbing company, and he talks about why this plumbing company is so fantastic. How are we able to have a plumbing experience? And at the end of it, we say, wow, that was an amazing plumbing experience. Not something you expect from a plumber. But in his book, he describes these companies that have taken customer service and interaction with people to the next level. And it gets you thinking, how can I take it to the next level? How can I make my experience better than anybody else's? I will have to say, I've taken a lot of his advice on how to implement a place online. So here's an internet company. The Pursuit of WoW talks nothing of internet companies. It's a book that's been around since 1994. There's no internet company conversations in there, but every single story that's in there makes you think about how you could be better with what you are doing. And there's a lot of great books like that out there, and I recommend them to whoever might be interested in sort of going off the scope of technology and really approaching how the world works. That's a really good one too. I think that's the best one. That book that was Tom Peters, The Pursuit of WoW. Tom Peters. Tom Peters has, I don't know, 1 million books. He has tons of books now. That's the one I started with, but any of his stuff is just super good. The other one that I always mention because it was a really good one. I got a chance to hear the author speak, and I want to get the name right on the book because I always call it the wrong thing. And I will find it in here. This is the problem, is when I heard the person speak regarding this book, he gave us a book. Everybody in here gets a copy of the book, and we did. But now we're in the digital world, and I don't even know where my physical books are anymore. So I will find these books. I don't know if I'm even finding the right things that are in here. I'm not finding the right book that I want, but I will find it for our next study group. Well, we even go through those. And if you have a book that is a motivational book or one that can help you with business skills or personal speaking or whatever it happens to be, stick them in the comments of this video. I look at every single comment that's posted to my videos. So stick it in the comments, and we'll bring these up at our December study group and talk about why is this one something you should think about, or in what cases did you run into those. There's so many different resources to pull from. I can't possibly know all of them, and certainly some of you have been able to use those as well. So I'd love to hear what you used, and I'll do some more research on my side to see how well I want that. I need to add something to my Kindle anyway, my Kindle app anyway, onto my iPad. And that would be a good way to do it. Lucas in the chat room, thank you for the $10 super chat. No specific message in the super chat. You're welcome to add one, but we sure appreciate you and your support. Oh, he says, I just passed my Security Plus. And if you've gone through the Security Plus, you know that's no small feat. That Security Plus exam is huge, enormous exam. Lots to learn and some great things to learn. Especially if you are in sort of the DC area, Virginia, Maryland, it's almost a must-have. And then in other parts of the country, it's a really good to have. So that's a great one to have. Can't even believe it. Lucas says 2 months of study. Absolutely. Makes perfect sense to me. In fact, I would say that's short. I would say you really didn't. You're probably faster than most folks doing their Security Plus. You're quite welcome. I'm so glad you were able to get through that Security Plus. Thank you also for your support of what we do here and the super chat you put as well. As I mentioned before, every single bit goes right back into this, so we can have this. Why can't we call you like we used to? I just haven't done any of the call-in lines. The chat seems to go a little bit faster. We're able to get a lot more in a shorter period of time. So far, that's what we've gone with. We might go back to calls here eventually. They're a lot of fun. It's nice hearing people when they call in. But we're trying to streamline things just a little bit. But if you have a question, you can always put that in there. The latest Security Plus is the SY0601 is the current version. Just curious, is it possible to get a discounted physical copy of my 1101 and 1102 books? Purchased the digital version, found out you get the digital with the physical. You sure do. And all you have to do is open a ticket. You've got a membership there. Open a ticket in your member login. There's a help desk that's in there, and say, hey, I bought this and I want the physical. I will send you instructions and a coupon for getting the physical without having to repay for the digital. So you still have to buy the physical part of it, but it's discounted for what you've already spent already. So you don't spend extra money. There's no reason to pay for something twice, but I will make you pay for it once. So you don't have to pay for it twice. I'll throw a discount in there so you don't have to do that. And I'm more than happy to do that. So feel free. It's an easy thing to do on my side too. And I want you to have as much access to these study materials as possible. There's no reason to bundle them in a way that doesn't allow you to get your hands on them, especially if you'd like the printed, because the printed books, I got to tell you, these printed books are nice glossy color, and their color inside. It's nice, heavier type of print. The pages are 60-pound white. I'll tell you exactly what we're running here. And they're good. It's a nice, high-quality book. Nice, perfect bound, high-quality book. So that's what I want. I don't do anything, halfway. You know that already. So it's a great book. And a lot of people said, well, this is much better than what I could ever print myself. Can I just get the printed version for the difference in price? Absolutely. Just send me a note and we'll make that happen. Easy, easy, easy. How do I feel about boot camps? Some of you have been on my live streams before. You know how I feel about boot camps. Says, I'm currently taking a cybersecurity boot camp, which eventually I'll finish with 4 projects to show employers and take Security Plus. This doesn't sound like a boot camp to me. This through my college. This sounds like a semester-long course that they call a boot camp, which is not a boot camp, but if you're doing 4 projects, it sounds to me like it's, 10 weeks long kind of thing. Tell me what you think a boot camp is, Cole, or what the 6 months. It's 6 months long. That's not a boot camp. How long does it take an actual boot camp? For those of you that have been in the military who've had to go through boot camp, I have not. How long does it take to go through an actual boot camp? Generally, I would like to know. 3 months for the U.S. Marine Corps. That's about right, I would think. The world of technology, 12 weeks. There you go. So the world of technology boot camps is a little bit different. I think for the most part, when you see somebody promoting a boot camp in the world of training, it's we're really talking about a week, sometimes 2 weeks if we stretch it a bit. But I would say most boot camps that I have seen was a 1 week thing. And it was around getting you through a certification. It was an A+ boot camp, a network plus boot camp, a security plus boot camp. And they're going to run through everything in a week. And in a week, you will somehow be able to have everything you need to know to pass that certification exam, which, by the way, is impossible. You can't do that in a week. There's no way. There's no physical way to get all of that information into your brain in 1 week. It can't work that way. But a lot of these boot camps that you see online that will teach you everything you need to know for Security Plus in 5 days. We guarantee it. That's the part I love. Is we guarantee it. That's not the case at all. There's no possible way you could learn everything you need for the Security Plus in 1 week. All right, well, let's take it a little bit differently. What if we study up for Security Plus? We become familiar with the topics that are in Security Plus. We watch some videos or read some books. And now that we have familiarity with the topics, now we take the boot camp. Well, if you've already done the videos and you've already read the books, what do you need the boot camp for? You don't need it anymore. You already did that part. So that 1 week boot camp is worthless to me. Anytime you see a 1 or 2 week boot camp, it would be remarkably unusual for that boot camp to provide any value whatsoever. There's no way to do it. Now, what has happened, though, is that the term boot camp from a marketing perspective has gained so much interest. And it's shown that people like the idea of a boot camp. They like the term. They like the words. That a lot of places just use that as the name of their course. So if you took a course like this example here is their boot camp, as we went through it through your college, was 6 months long. It's kind of hard to call that a boot camp. That's a course. You went to class for 6 months. Now, it could be a class you only meet once a week, or maybe it's only on the weekends, or maybe it's a night thing. I get it. It's 6 months long, and you were able to get a lot of stuff in there. I don't think you should call that a boot camp. You should call it a very well-designed, well-laid out, perfectly timed cybersecurity course. That's what you should call that, because that's what it is. Boot camp, in my mind, I know that they use boot camp as a way to market that to people, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. Good for you. Market out and get people in the room and get them learning this stuff, whatever makes sense. But in my mind, it's not boot camp. If it's a week or 2 weeks for IT, it's not a boot camp. So that's my approach to this. That's just a normal course, because that's what it takes to really learn this content. This is not easy stuff to learn. It is incredibly detailed, incredibly technical. So we need to really spend some time. And I like that you went through 4 different projects, really taking technology like intrusion prevention. All right, well, how do you implement that? What's it look like? What do the rules look like? How do you update the signatures? Unless you do it, it's more of a vague, weird thing that you've never done before. But if you have a project where you installed a firewall, you installed an IPS on top of it, and you're running it on your network, well, you've just learned a whole lot just by doing. So I think that's great. These classes, they're not degrees. They are formal education, absolutely. But I think the important part is the projects and being able to take that knowledge you have and bring it into your home lab and create your own labs and run your own security tasks and show a potential employer what you're doing in your home to protect it. That's what you could do. And you could talk to them. Now you know all the language. And that's really part of this. When I first got into security, I was really focused on networking. I was doing protocol analysis, but then Network General got bought by McAfee. This was way back. And we became network associates. because McAfee, they changed their name to Network Associates back in the day. And as Network Associates, they purchased Firewall Company. They purchased an intrusion prevention company. They purchased PGP. They bought all of these security tools because that's what was hot back then. And I got to get training on, I got to meet Phil Zimmerman. I got to get training on PGP. I got training on intrusion prevention. I got training on firewalls. And there's a whole nother set of languages around that. And now when I went into an interview now with a security company, I went into an interview with Palo Alto Networks and said, I'd love to be a systems engineer here. I'm very familiar with firewalls, intrusion prevention. They like, tell us what you know about firewalls. I'm like, okay, well, let's go down the road. Well, these are the ones I've worked with. This was the type of firewall it was. Here's what we did to configure it and set it up and do all those things. This was what we were doing. And that's the type of conversation that I could have because I did it. I physically put together that technology and watched it work. And you have a different set of conversations you can have at that point and different terms that you use because you went through that process. Yes, John McAfee was well gone from the company about that point. He's been gone for a long time out of McAfee. Sort of that Norton and McAfee were the two big antivirus back in the day. And of course, Norton was purchased by Symantec. McAfee continued to be McAfee at the time. They were bought and sold into different names generally. Eventually, Network Associates divested itself of Network General. They went back to calling themselves McAfee, and that's where it is today in those works. So that's what I think boot camps is that 1 week, 2 week boot camps are worthless, generally speaking. And what you want is like what you did, is to go through an entire class, get plenty of hands-on, have people you can talk to, bounce things off other folks. That's what you need to go through, is those pieces of it. There's another couple books that came through in the chat. I'm sorry I missed these as I was doing, but Tim Ferriss, also fantastic books. Tribe of Mentors is another recommendation that is in the chat from Carson. Thank you, Carson, for adding that as well. These books are so good. You always find good, oh, what are you reading? What are you reading? And at that level, being able to find a good book that gives you value. I mean, you think of something like someone who is managing or running a business, you know, you're not doing a thing. You're not on an assembly line and doing the same thing all the time. Your challenges come from all over in different ways. There's just, it's remarkable how many things you never expected to be dealing with in the management of a company that suddenly now you're in a position of having to deal with it. Where do you find the direction to know even how to handle these things? And some of these books are great for providing direction. And you kind of take, I love watching stories and autobiographical type videos or books, autobiographical. Wow, that was a long thing that happened there. And one of the things I love about that is finding somebody who starts low, they get up into the middle, they're pushed back down again, and then somehow they just exceed it and just go through the roof. I think Walt Disney's story is a really good example of that. He had this fantastic portfolio of animation characters. He got into a distribution deal with a third party, and the distribution deal took all of his characters. They took all of the rights for everything that he was doing. And he was effectively left with nothing. Back on a train, heading back home, his entire company had just been decimated. And he sat down and he said, well, we got to do something. And he started drawing. And on the train back home, he created this mouse named Mickey, ultimately. And it was a really good example of somebody who was really doing fantastic in business, suddenly losing effectively everything. It was Walt Disney. And the rest of the story is Walt Disney. How can you learn from that? There's something you can take away from stories like that. And his tenacity and his will to keep moving. I would have thrown myself off the train. Not him. No. Let's do this. Now, interestingly enough, on all of these things really work themselves around. The challenge you have with this is that that first character that was taken away from him was Oswald the rabbit, and the company, Disney company, effectively lost, Disney lost control of Oswald the rabbit only recently in the last, I want to say 10 years or so. It was the last CEO reign at Disney. Did they finally make an acquisition that got them back control of Oswald the rabbit? So there's the end of that circle that Walt Disney in what must have been the 40s or 50s, losing Oswald, making a new company, and then finally Disney regaining rights and control to Oswald the rabbit again was there was just something about that story like, okay, it's never done. There's never a point where you're finished. It's always a work in progress, and you never can stop with that if you keep going. There's been plenty of things we've done in this company that have worked great, and plenty of things I've done in this company that have been an utter flop. But you learn from all of them. And I think that applies to us as well. We have jobs that we love. We have jobs that we've been in that we've hated. But if you think back, you can always take something away from all of those. And I think that applies to everybody in IT and really anywhere. But it can certainly help you in your career level up and get to that next point where you're either getting that job or getting that better job. That's the idea. Well, hopefully that gives you some perspective. The idea, I think, especially for those of you that are working sort of in this industry, is to just keep going. Whether you do well in these certifications or not, just keep going. Did you pass the exam? No, we'll do it again. Just keep doing it till you pass it. That's the key as well. And work through all of those. I would recommend. Hey, Professor Messer, we'll take this last one and then we'll figure it out. I don't want to take the A+ exam. It's about to retire. Well, the old version is. Is it worth it to watch my old videos on the subject? It is not. It is. Don't watch the old stuff. Always make sure that your study materials match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. If you're starting your studies right now, you will be taking the 220-1101 or 220-1102. Those videos started coming out in April, and they're complete on my website. I have full courses on both of those available for you to watch right now, and those are the ones you should watch for those videos. Don't watch older videos if you're taking a newer certification. Make sure all of your materials have the same number on them as your study materials and the exam you're taking. As long as they study, you're in good shape. Carson also says, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, where he talks about perseverance. Always a good one, too. These are great ideas. Make sure you stick these into once this is over, you can put them into the YouTube video, the YouTube chat, or the YouTube comments once this is over, so that I can have those documented in there. If you would do that, that would be super awesome. I'd love to have those in there. And anybody else who's watching this, if you have certain business-related or motivational books that you have, put them into the YouTube chat once this is over. So we have a kind of a track of those, and then maybe we can talk about those on our next study group in December. And that's when I'll see you next, is December. Thank you for being here on our October study group. I'll miss you for a month because I love doing this. So I'll be itching to get back in front of the microphone in December. We can't wait for our next study groups then. We'd love for you to come back. On our website, you can always sign up and check the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. We'll make those happen as well. There is a lot to go through in a very short period of time for those of you studying up for your A+. For the older versions, for those of you that have been studying and studying, you're trying to get this done before October the 20th. I wish you the best of luck. As always, when these things retire, there's a ton of people who are going to be working on this on the last day. So I am there with you, even though I'm not live. We are here on Discord. We're here at our website. We'll do whatever we can to help you. If you have questions, just reach out. We'll see what we can do to help you get through that final push before that series is retired. For everybody else, we're already studying the 1101 and 1102. We're going to make that happen as well. We appreciate you being here. We'll see all of you next time on our A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.